Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is 5 Petals in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 6. While Kakashi details his position to her, Kurane stares at him in silence. Anko just makes sure her mouth is full of dango at any given moment and avoids looking at Kurane's intense red eyes. Back when there were more of them to go around, people accused the Sharingan of being creepy, but honestly the UI have them beat because their eyes are like that all the time. Sakura's chakra nature is earth, so her learning the Chidori is right out, Kakashi explains, leaning back in the cheap hospital cafeteria chair. If she's going to have even a ghost of a chance against Gaara, she's going to need to hone her strengths, and her main talent lies in genjutsu. Naturally, Kurane, you're a perfect fit for her. Kurane just slits her eyes in a glare. I hope you haven't forgotten that I also have a genin to train for the 3rd exam. Kakashi's mask shifts in such a way that Anko's sure he's smiling, but it quite literally doesn't reach his eye. I haven't. In fact, I was so interested in that I asked how Shivi's taking the news and learned he plans on giving Shino special training in secret techniques. He, with all due respect, doesn't want his Jonin sensei learning the ins and outs of. Just in case. Kurane doesn't say anything, just drumming her fingers on the table, the only thing between her and Kakashi's very punchable face. Anko loudly swallows her bite of dango before piping up, then why am I here? My genjutsu's shit. The look Kakashi sends her way is quite a bit more serious. Since you have personal experience with Sakura's condition, I thought you'd be best suited to help her train her will to get through it. As I've explained already, Sakura wouldn't benefit from what I can teach her. I'm asking the two of you for a favor, one I will pay back. Kurane and Anko share a look that says one thing they both understand clear as daylight: is this guy fucking serious? So Anko's the first to answer, shrugging as she says, I really don't know what you want from me, Kakashi. I'm a special Jonin for a reason, not suited for instructing genin. It's written in my file in big red letters. Besides, everything I know I learned from Orochimaru. I thought we were trying to stop her from becoming a littler, pinker me. Kurane leans forward, mouth hidden behind steepled fingers so all Kakashi can see are her piercing scarlet eyes. Are you avoiding training Sakura because you are not suited to it, or because she looks like Rin? Kakashi goes completely still. Anko's jaw drops open into a grin, eyes wide and darting between Kurane and Kakashi as she laughs. Oh ho ho, damn, right for the gut, huh? You do not fuck around, UI. Kurane keeps going like Anko didn't even say anything. It's not really your fault that you ended up with your late teacher's son, the last Uchiha, and a girl who looks too much like Rin. It is your fault that you're avoiding Naruto and Sakura in favor of doting on Sasuke, especially when they need just as much help and guidance as he does. Kakashi, it's this simple: they are children. You're an adult. Naruto doesn't have anyone else and Sakura only has her mother. They need you. Saying Kakashi is staring at Kurane doesn't feel quite right. It's more like he's staring past her, or through her. Anko winces with all these low blows. She sincerely hopes Asuma knows how not to make Kurane mad at this point. Kurane's face softens as she sighs. Honestly, I wouldn't be opposed to helping Sakura. But I'm not going to enable you. I'll only train her if you train her as well. I can lessen your load, I won't take the whole thing. Anko nods, leaning back to prop her feet up on the table. Yeah, like, if you can do that, I'll try to keep an eye on Sakura and talk to her every now and again, but I'm not a counselor, I'm not a teacher, and on top of that Lord Hokage wants me planning countermeasures for if our uninvited guest decides to make trouble. Your girl is your responsibility, Kakashi. Kakashi finally moves, nodding ever so slightly for himself, not for them. He meets their eyes. That can work. The hospital discharges Sakura the morning after the preliminaries, and Sasuke finds himself wishing she could stay just a little bit longer. That wish stems almost entirely from the absolute misery that is Lee waking up and being given the news. Sasuke doesn't see it firsthand because he doesn't need to. There's suddenly a commotion from several rooms down the hall, a sound like shouting and things being knocked over. Hakume is suddenly called away from giving Sasuke his physical therapy itinerary because the boy needs to be restrained, and she runs like the devil to get there. He hears voices rising: Lee's, guys, every orderly and nurse brought into the room before suddenly cutting off. Even when things calm down, Hakume doesn't come back. Sasuke creeps out of his room, as stealthy as he can be while bound to a crutch, and walks until he comes to a stop outside Lee's still open door. Lee's face is pressed into Guy's shoulder as he shakes with sobs, one intact arm wrapped around him and hand grasping his flak jacket tight enough he might tear it. Guy has him in an embrace that's tight, but Suzuki imagines it would be tighter if Lee was in better shape, weeping as quietly as he can into his student's hair. Hakume is standing off to the side, hands in her white coat's pockets, staring past the two of them out the window with a bone-deep weariness in everything from the set of her shoulders to the way her head droops every so slightly. Suzuki's not sure why, but he's suddenly turning as fast as he can and racing away, not just back to his room but all the way down the stairs and out to the courtyard garden. And then he just wanders. He hobbles along the paths, looking at the trees, thinking about how warm it is outside even for early July, trying to identify the birds by call, before he finds himself beside the hospital pond. He's not alone out here. Hinata is sitting on one of the benches nearby, all prim and proper posture that comes with good breeding despite the fact that she's connected to an foredrip and is crying. She somehow manages to do that aristocratically too, keeping her sobs restrained to tiny, uneven breaths and hiccups while her tears run down her cheeks in even lines. Suzuki hasn't held a conversation longer than, "May I borrow a pencil please?" with Hinata since they were 5 years old, so he just stands there wondering if he should stay or go until she looks up and he's pinned to the spot by her white eyes rimmed in red. Did you hear?" she whispers, barely audible, her voice is so weak. What they told? What they said to Lee?" Suzuki just nods as he comes over to Hinata and sits down on the bench beside her. As he settles down on the stone he quickly realizes Hinata's not quite sobbing, more just trying to breathe when her condition demands she be wearing an oxygen mask. She probably stopped sobbing a while ago. Hinata has a remarkable talent for talking just as Suzuki's wondering what he should say, murmuring, "It's just. Lee worked so hard. I remember seeing him on the training grounds until dark, even though. No matter what any of the other kids said about him he never gave up, and Guy was always supporting him, and he was trying so hard and." She has to stop, taking deep, rapid breaths as she clutches at her chest. Suzuki's Sherry-non springs to life on instinct as he tenses up with a frown and a shake of his head he blinks it away. It's not the Byakugan, he can't see through her chest to see if she's in danger of having another heart attack. He can't do anything for her except watch. Hinata's breathing calms down, though it still catches and stutters, and when she looks to him her eyes are full of tears again. It's not fair. Suzuki likes to think he's become something of an expert on unfair circumstances, so when he says, "Yeah, it's not," he imagines that carries some weight. Hinata nods again, and the two of them sit in silence for a while, watching the koi in the pond swim around and around in lazy circles. Then Hinata suddenly blurts out, "I'm sorry about your family." For a good minute all Suzuki can do is stare at her, wide-eyed, brows furrowed, jaw hanging slightly open. Just as he's about to ask her where that came from, she answers his question, "We stopped talking in the academy, and then the incident happened and you stopped talking to anyone, and there was just never a good time to say it, but I always. I'm so sorry. Your mom was nice. Your mom was so nice." Suzuki's not sure what to say. So he opens his mouth and says the first thing that comes to mind, "Thanks. I'm sorry about your family, too." Hinata is quiet. Suzuki has half a second to think she took that as an insult before she smiles ever so slightly. Things progress with quite a bit less drama from there on out. The first 2 weeks of Suzuki's stay fall into a fairly regular routine of mystical palm treatments, physical therapy that makes him regret ever calling Kakashi a hard-ass when it came to training, and bumming around the hospital garden because he's still in no shape to walk all the way to his apartment and back every day. Suzuki thinks that seems like a good challenge and way to rehabilitate his body without getting too wild with it, but Hakume thinks he's a stupid little punk who got himself in this mess and still thinks he knows better than the trained medical professionals, so he doesn't push it much. It's not long before the only 3 genin left over from the Chunin exams still in the hospital are Suzuki, Hinata, and Lee, and the 3 of them end up seeing quite a lot of each other. For Hinata and Suzuki, it's generally pleasant. They tend to end up in the cafeteria at the same time and take their lunches together or find each other while both meandering around the garden and turn their separate walks into one, making understated conversation. Between Hinata's shyness and Suzuki's ungraceful way with words, that's really the best they can do. But they improve with their conditions. Hinata gains the strength and the comfort to talk about how things have changed in the Hyuga household since Suzuki stopped being dragged there to fritter the time away while their fathers talked. Suzuki relaxes and tells her about the missions he's taken with Team 7, both mundane and exceptional. Out of necessity, Suzuki has become very good at identifying crushes. One day he asks Hinata why she doesn't fawn over and invade Naruto's personal space like the academy girls always did for him, and she turns the same color as the tomato Suzuki's eating before forgetting how to speak entirely. It's the funniest thing Suzuki's seen in years. Suzuki's run-ins with Lee are decidedly less pleasant. For the first week, anytime Suzuki sees Lee, it's generally in glimpses taken while passing his room. He seems to barely move unless he is physically moved, preferring to stare either out the window or at the wall with a blank, defeated look on his face. Suzuki hates it. He hates seeing Lee, bundle of obnoxious energy and passion, completely drained of both. It shouldn't even be possible. But it somehow gets worse, because the next week Lee transitions from depression to angry denial. Lee attacks his physical therapy like a man possessed, which Suzuki has a front row seat to since their appointments are at the same time in the same area of the hospital. Lee pushes himself far harder than even his therapist recommends and tries to argue for more time, more intense therapy, more. And when they won't give him more, he starts taking matters into his own hands, trying to train on his own time, sneaking out of his room and being found collapsed somewhere else in the hospital. It's almost impressive how far he gets sometimes. Hakume grumbles over her paperwork one night as Suzuki joins her in the on-call room. He rarely sleeps all the way through the night and eventually she just puts him to work helping her take down patient notes instead of letting him wander the halls like a ghost. But I swear, the kid's gonna end up killing himself if he keeps on like this. He refuses to engage when the counselor meets with him. He doesn't even listen when his teacher visits and tries to talk some sense into him. I have no goddamn idea what to do with this kid. Suzuki, being a preteen boy with a history of dealing poorly with injury himself, doesn't imagine he can give much in the way of valuable advice. He simply nods as he copies Hakume's notes down in his impeccable, the words of many an academy teacher, not him, handwriting. Things come to a head at the end of Suzuki's second week when he's taking a walk with Hinata through the hospital garden. As they're coming out towards the pond, Suzuki's the first to hear him, Lee's voice straining around his attempts to count whatever exercise it is he's trying to do, and Suzuki for a second can only be impressed with the fact he's gotten to 189 of them. But then Hinata is gasping and running as best she can despite her trouble breathing, and Suzuki is swearing and hobbling along behind her. Lee is a pathetic sight. Suzuki's not one for kind words already, and even he can't think of anything nicer to say as Lee struggles to complete a push-up on one set of broken toes with an arm in a sling. His face is ashen and soaked in sweat as his body shudders all over, quite obviously biting the inside of his cheek to try and work through the no doubt immense amount of pain he's in. And on top of all that, he's muttering to himself like a madman, 200 push-ups, that was the deal. If you cannot finish them, it is 100 leg squats, so come on. Here we go. 190. Hinata steps closer, hands folded over her chest as she tries to talk around her labored breathing. Lee, you shouldn't be out here. Why you have to stop, why are you? Lee carries on, pointedly ignoring Hinata. 191. Suzuki frowns and lets out a frustrated grunt before walking up beside Hinata. Lee, come on, knock it off. Please, Lee, we were all worried about you. Hinata reaches out to touch Lee's shoulder, to try and draw his attention to them. She gets his attention all right. Lee's head whips around to meet Hinata's eyes as he snaps, keep away from me. Please. Got to finish my training. There's tears in Hinata's eyes as Lee struggles through several more push-ups, groaning out once again to himself as if Hinata and Suzuki didn't even exist. Do not count me out. I am not through yet. Suzuki shuts his eyes tight and growls through gritted teeth. Hinata. Go get a nurse. She looks up to him, eyes wide and hands shaking. Are you sure? Aye. The Sharingan turns on by itself as Suzuki meets her eyes, gaze intense. Just go already. Hinata doesn't need much more convincing. She runs as fast as her damaged organs can take her back up the way they came. Suzuki's not quite proud of what he does next. He uses his crutch to flip Lee onto his back, stopping his movement without hurting his already ruined arm and leg. Yes, but not the most dignified way to do it. Lee flails like an overturned turtle and Sasuke has to step on Lee's stomach with his good leg to make sure he doesn't move too much. He thinks, distantly, that from the outside this whole situation probably looks ridiculous. Lee shouting from the ground brings Sasuke back into the moment. Get off of me. Let me go. Sasuke, through gritted teeth, retorts, not gonna happen, you've screwed yourself up enough for one day. Lee glares up at him, eyes burning with so much anger Sasuke almost doesn't recognize them. What makes you think you know better? You are going to recover one day. You get to keep being a ninja. You have no right to talk down to me. I'm trying to keep you from dying, dumbass, Sasuke shoots back, trying and mostly failing to keep his temper in check. I get how you're feeling. Wrong choice of words. Lee grabs at Sasuke's calf and tries to wrench him off, bitter tears spilling from his eyes as he snarls, no you do not. There is no way you ever could. You are an Uchiha, a genius, born with every advantage. You do not know what it is like to have nothing. Something in Sasuke snaps. He throws his crutch to the ground, grabs Lee by the front of his hospital-issue shirt as he falls to one knee, and yells in his face, the hell I don't. I used to have parents. That gets Lee to freeze, but Sasuke wants to keep yelling, so he does. Don't you dare tell me I don't know how it feels to lose the most important thing in your life. It's like having your guts torn out and thrown into a river. It hurts and it never stops hurting. Even if I kill Itachi, even if I avenge the clan and restore it, I don't think it'll ever stop. Sasuke almost forgets Lee is there. He's never said this out loud. It's been skirting around in the depths of his mind, gnawing at him whenever he thinks about Itachi and vengeance and everything that's been keeping him going, but now that his own strength has been judged and found wanting, it's too hard to ignore. Itachi needs to die. He knows he does. The Uchiha need to flourish again. He's certain they do. But the hole in his heart is too wide, too deep, too empty, he's not sure anything in the world can fill it. Sasuke's eyes burn and his throat aches and he hates that he's crying in front of Lee, but Lee still has tear tracks on his face, so he considers them even. And, even if it never stops, Sasuke sighs, letting Lee go and sitting down heavily in the dirt, you can't go making it worse. It's just stupid. Lee is silent for a long time before he asks, your clan. Do you miss them? Sasuke, to his own surprise, laughs, all the time. Even though I was there and I saw it happen, it sometimes doesn't feel real, you know? Like I'll catch myself walking towards the Uchiha district instead of my apartment when I'm going home, or I have dreams where they're all still alive, then wake up and for a few minutes think, oh shit, I overslept, Dad's gonna kill me, before I remember it wasn't real. Or Sasuke leans back on his good arm, you wanna know the most fucked up thing that happens? I sometimes miss Itachi. I'll forget for a second that he's the reason this all happened and I just miss my brother, and when I remember, it just... Do you remember how it felt when Gaara crushed your arm and leg? It feels like that. Every single time. Lee scooches over to sit next to Sasuke and says in a soft voice, my parents died when the Nine Tails attacked. I knew nothing about them, except that they were shinobi. When I started, I simply wanted to know why they decided to live and die the way they did. I wanted to understand. Lee starts to well up again, and I do. It is more than fighting. It is pride, in our village and in ourselves. Yes, we may not always do what is right, but we are always protecting those we love, and there is something noble in that. I cannot imagine a life where I do not do that anymore. Sasuke smirks, cuffing Lee on the uninjured shoulder, you're too good to be true, you know that. Lee grins, I suppose I am, because there is another reason I have too many unfinished fights. Sasuke just laughs as he spots Hinata coming back up the path with a nurse in tow, knew there was a catch. Despite the short courses over a long period of time, the mystical palm jutsu is still so potent that Sasuke is, apparently, recovering twice as fast as it would take him to with only mundane medicine. By the end of his second week he's able to use his formerly bad arm for most normal activity, though his shoulder doesn't quite agree with his secret arm wrestling matches with Lee, so Sasuke imagines it will still be a good few weeks before he can use it for combat. Hakume also clears him to start putting some weight on his bad leg, but only while wearing a brace, and never for very long. Might as well say right now, get used to the brace, Hakume says as she fits it on him. You'll probably need a less intense one to manage pain even when you're well enough to jump through trees. Suzuki's been coming to terms with the permanence of his injury. Seeing Lee's predicament firsthand is very good for developing perspective. Still, the concept of needing a brace forever makes Suzuki go quiet and do a lot of staring into space for the rest of that day. He's so caught up in his own thoughts he doesn't catch his stare getting so intense that the Sherry-non turns on as he's getting another round of mystical palm treatments. It occurs to Suzuki later that day as he's doing his daily bit of wandering through the hospital gardens that he probably copied the mystical palm jutsu. He wonders if Hakume is right about even his Sherry-non needing a couple chances to get it right, and as fate would have it he comes across a bird lying on the ground, wing broken. Suzuki's Sherry-non spins to life and his hand glows with a light blue-green chakra as he gently presses it to the broken wing. The bird instantly dies from a heart attack. Once Suzuki stops staring down at it, eyes wide in shock, he checks the wing and finds it had started knitting itself back together. Not perfect, but promising. Over that weekend Suzuki starts experimenting with the mystical palm jutsu, falling into a rhythm cover his Sherry-non with a genjutsu during the day's course of treatment, then at the end of the day in his room fish a kunao out of his gear in the wardrobe and practice by giving himself small puncture wounds and trying to heal them. He's aware of the irresponsibility of this tactic. If anyone finds out he'll probably be considered a suicide risk and lose all his gear for good, but he's not going to find birds with broken wings every day and he's not stupid enough to experiment on his knee or his fellow genin, so this is the best option. It doesn't take him long before he can heal a small pinprick without a scar, but longer cuts come out only half healed or stay open. Suzuki quickly learns that getting frustrated and trying to force the wounds shut tends to result in his heart rate spiking and the cut just oozing more blood. He starts wearing his arm guards again and if anyone notices they don't say anything. That Monday, for the first time since he was admitted, Kakashi stops by. Suzuki hides his urge to ask Kakashi why he's been ignoring him by instead incessantly asking about Sakura's training and their plan against Gaara. Kakashi deflects his questions in his typical way, with vague answers and lame changes of subject, and Suzuki finds himself wolfing down stale hospital omusubi while glaring across the cafeteria table at him while he's no doubt smirking under his mask. And Suzuki chokes on that omusubi when Kakashi remarks, "You know, there's better ways to practice the chakra control you need for mystical palm jutsu than making yourself look like you have a drug problem." Once he's done coughing up the rice, Suzuki sputters, "How?" "Hakume," Kakashi replies, definitely smirking now, "you really should know better than to think you can hide anything from a Hyuga. You're just lucky she came to me before putting you on suicide watch just to teach you a lesson." Suzuki stares at him, eyes wide. "She wouldn't." Kakashi just keeps smirking, "She absolutely would. She's a brilliant doctor but she's worse with kids than I am." Suzuki's first urge is to tell Kakashi he's not that bad, but he swallows it and instead asks, "Well, do you have any better ideas?" "Believe it or not, I don't like experimenting on myself." Kakashi leans closer, resting his cheek on his hand, and asks, "How would you like to learn how to use the lightning blade?" Suzuki would like it to be officially known that his jaw absolutely did not drop. Kakashi's eye crinkles at the corner. "It'll help with your chakra control, but it can get a bit messy. Sakura is busy these days, but we'll see if she can give you any advice. I'm training her every other day, so I can get you out of here on the days I'm not training her. This all sound good?" "Yes," Suzuki forcefully replies before catching himself and making himself lean back. "I mean, you sure you're gonna have time to train Naruto if you start training me?" Kakashi lets out a sort of surprised laugh before he answers, "Well, I had intended to start training Naruto right about now after sending him off with someone to help him fix up his fundamentals, but he somehow managed to stumble into someone who'll teach him better than I ever could, so here I am." Suzuki narrows his eyes. His mile-wide competitive streak wants to ask about Naruto's new teacher, but he gets the feeling Kakashi's going to get very vague if he asks, so he keeps it to himself and listens with rapt attention as Kakashi lays out how this new schedule is going to work. Suzuki privately admits to himself that while the Chidori is tantalizing in its power and spectacle, he's mostly itching to get out of the hospital. He was starting to develop cabin fever, and the track marks on his arm were just his most obvious symptom. Hakume signs off on the plan when they bring it to her, citing that Sasuke was starting to get squirrely as reason enough to let him go. The training ground Kakashi brings him to when they start is a lot closer to the hospital than Sasuke expected it to be. It makes sense if there's an accident in training, the hospital's where you want to go first, but he does feel a bit condescended to considering he's getting better at walking further and further on his crutch and can put slightly more weight on his injured leg every day. When he brings this up, Kakashi dares Sasuke to run from one end of the training ground to another. Sasuke blanches and Kakashi laughs. "Yeah, there's a reason we're starting out just holding the Chidori," Kakashi says, coming in and quickly ruffling his hair before Sasuke can push him away. "It's going to take you a while longer before you're up to running with it." One of the first things that Sasuke thinks of as he and Kakashi get to work is that chakra natures should have been covered in the academy. The second is that trying to make and hold pure lightning is perhaps a better education in the exact flaws of his chakra control and the limits of his Sharingan than trying to heal the broken wings of birds. His control is imprecise, and to push so much power into one place and keep it there, precision is a must. Sasuke starts out essentially creating small lightning bombs that leave minor burns on his palm the second after they explode, but Kakashi tells him it's a fairly good start and Sasuke does an alright job using his other hand to heal the charred skin. Kakashi trains him every other day from sunrise to sundown, at which point he takes Sasuke to a random restaurant in walking distance for dinner because he remembers all his stints in the hospital and he's not going to let Sasuke's taste buds atrophy from eating that food all the time. Sasuke probably enjoys that part the most. At least he does until a rogue element tips the scales in favor of the training itself. Sakura starts showing up. When she first pops up at the training ground, Sasuke's just stunned to see her again, not just because he didn't expect it but because she looks quite a bit different. She did clean up her new hairstyle a bit, but that mostly just comes from brushing it. It's still as short in the back and long in the front as before and has taken to wearing a long-sleeved black shirt made of breathable but strong material under her usual dress to cover up the mark, as well as black gloves that almost match Kakashi's. There's some new but healing scars on her calves, and whenever she shows up she generally has a small bandage or two on her face, but when she does she's positively glowing. She's never there for particularly long. Her genjutsu training with Kurane has progressed to Sakura having to spend whole days keeping Kurane from catching her by throwing her off her trail with techniques she's learned, so she'll come too close to Sakura's liking and she'll have to sprint off. But while she's there she's pure encouragement, cheering Sasuke on and giving him advice on chakra control that's a bit more academic than Kakashi's. Sasuke imagines once she's a Jonin, any genin would be lucky to have her because her advice alongside Kakashi's helps him move quite a bit faster than he thought he would, going up from creating tiny explosions to being able to hold the Chidori for a minute. When they have a second, Sasuke tries to ask Sakura what her strategy against Gaara's going to be. Her eyes light up and she almost tells him before she catches herself and grins at him instead. "Sorry, but I'm gonna have to keep that a secret for now," she says, almost apologetic. "I want it to be a surprise for everyone." Sasuke doesn't push it, but he doesn't hide his frown as he gets back to training. He's always hated surprises. Sasuke's off days at the hospital aren't too different than they used to be, except that Naruto is visiting quite a bit more often. Every few days he would pop in to see how Sasuke is doing, but now Sasuke can count on him to be there any day he's not training with Kakashi after sundown, because apparently Naruto needs someone to vent to. The sum total of his visits tends to be them sitting in the cafeteria, Sasuke eating and Naruto rambling about how his training is going nowhere and the pervy sage isn't teaching him shit and he's probably just tricking him with this whole toad summoning business, and who needs chakra control anyway, he's been getting on just fine without it, and damn, this hospital makes crappy ramen, so Sasuke had better get better soon so he can do this at Ichiraku, not the hospital. Naruto's ramblings make very little sense, especially the parts where he talks about a perverted sage teaching him to control his chakra by summoning frogs. Sasuke at first privately assumes Naruto is lying. Then he publicly assumes Naruto is lying and they have to be thrown into the hall because there's no fighting in the cafeteria. It's 9 days before the final exam when Team 7 finally gets together for the first time since the preliminaries. Naruto has just come into the lobby and Sasuke meets him there because he can track Naruto like clockwork. When the door opens on Naruto's heels, Kakashi and Sakura walking through it, Sakura with some fresh bandages on her face as well as a brilliant smile, and Kakashi's headband not quite covering his Sharingan as much as it usually does. Sasuke blinks in surprise and is about to ask why they're here when Naruto shouts over him, "Kakashi-sensei! Sakura! It's been forever, what are you doing here?" Sakura rolls her eyes, "It's been 3 weeks, Naruto, calm down." Kakashi, surprisingly, is the one to actually answer a question straight out. "Sakura's been doing so well in her training that we finished up early today, so we thought we'd find the two of you and treat you to dinner. Like you said, it's been forever." Sakura and Kakashi spare a private, mirthful glance as Naruto's excitement ratchets up another notch and he starts begging that they go to Ichiraku, and Sasuke is sure they're up to something. It's probably not anything bad, but Sasuke hates surprises. Nevertheless, he shrugs, "It's not like we had anything better to do." Kakashi tells the three of them to get a head start since he has something to take care of here, and as the three of them make their way out, Sasuke looks over his shoulder to see Kakashi start talking to one of the receptionists in hushed tones. Also suspicious. Naruto and Sakura chatter across Sasuke as they walk on either side of him to Ichiraku. If they're bothered by having to walk slower to keep up with him, they don't say so, though Sakura does check in with him every couple minutes to see if he's alright. It's annoying, but it's proof she hasn't changed too much, so he only minds it a little bit. Sasuke expected Kakashi to surreptitiously meet them there via jumping across rooftops, but to his surprise he actually catches up with them and walks the rest of the way at street level, easily joining Naruto and Sakura's conversation. Sasuke's content just making the occasional comment, like Naruto said, "It's been forever." It's also been forever since Sasuke had ramen, and he thankfully remembers he likes tonkatsu ramen just in time before Naruto tries to order for him and make it the nastiest thing Tookie and Ayam can whip up. It's a lot easier for Sasuke to stay quiet and listen when he has the excuse of his mouth being full of noodles. "So Sakura, you gotta tell me," Naruto says across Kakashi, "what's the big strategy for taking out Gaara? Are you gonna use more cool genjutsu? That one you used against Ino was sweet, do you think he'd fall for it?" Apparently Kakashi had been training Sakura in how to answer questions without actually answering them. "I have been learning more genjutsu, but my training's been pretty broad. Kakashi-sensei's been drilling me in ninjutsu and taijutsu too, and he's an absolute slave driver." Kakashi just grins, "Sun up to sundown, every other day?" Naruto frowns, bouncing his leg as he asks, Yeah, but what are you gonna do? Lee went in hard with taijutsu and that didn't work, and that sand can block almost anything, so who knows about ninjutsu? Are you sure you're ready for this, Sakura?" Sakura frowns and shuts her eyes as she replies, "Naruto, I've been training every day, and I have 9 more days. I'm going to be fine." Naruto grimaces, I guess, but I saw what happened to Lee, and..." Sakura's jaw clenches tight and she cuts Naruto off, "So what's your strategy against Neji? I heard he did a number on Hinata, how are you going to deal with that?" Naruto is immediately on the defensive, well, I've got that all figured out. Yeah, it's all covered. Been planning since day one and ironing out the kinks, and I think I've got it all situated. Yeah. Neji won't know what hit him, believe it." Sakura smiles over at him, sickly sweet, "Really? Then you won't mind telling me what it is?" Naruto starts to sweat, and not from the heat of his ramen, right. "Well that's, it's, a surprise." "Yep. A big surprise. Just watch closely during the match and I'll blow your socks right off." Sakura just laughs as she pins her bangs back and takes a long slurp of ramen noodles. Sasuke also finds himself chuckling, just a little bit. Naruto manages to sheepishly scarf his whole bowl down before ordering seconds. Kakashi leans down to stage whisper to Sakura, "I think now's as good a time as any to give it to him." Sakura perks up and nods enthusiastically, "Oh yeah, right. Do you have it?" Kakashi just fishes around in his vest before handing Sakura a long, over 8 inches if Sasuke had to guess, box wrapped in blue and red paper. She spins on her seat and holds it out to Sasuke, grin wide, and cheeks rosy. "Happy birthday, Sasuke," she chirps. It takes Sasuke a couple seconds to process it. Is it his birthday? He looks to the calendar on the Ichiraku kitchen wall, July 23rd. Shit, it is. When was the last time he got a birthday gift? It had to be before. Naruto shouting breaks Sasuke out of his reverie. What? Sasuke, it's your birthday and you didn't even tell me. A man and Sakura got you a present. I don't have anything. Sasuke takes the box out of Sakura's hands, holding it gingerly like it's made of glass. I forgot all about it. Naruto's voice of course finds a way to be even louder. You forgot your own birthday. Kakashi takes that moment to slide some papers down the bar to Sasuke. Since we're doing this, you can have my gift too. Sasuke sets the box down carefully next to his ramen and picks up the papers. His brow furrows. These are hospital discharge papers. Oh. There's his name, right at the top. He rifles hurriedly through them. He'll have to come back once a month for a couple more months for checkups, and there's a list of exercises he's to do on his own to keep up his physical therapy, but for all intents and purposes he's out. Sasuke looks up just in time to see Kakashi smiling with his eye. You're a free man now, Sasuke. Toki smiles a warm, grandfatherly smile as he says, well, if it's your birthday Sasuke, then your orders are on the house, all you can eat. Though that's probably happier news for your sensei than you. I'm suddenly wishing it was Naruto's birthday, Kakashi mutters, looking through his wallet. Naruto lets out a frustrated yell, damn it, you guys did that just to show me up. Well, just you watch, I'm gonna get Sasuke a late birthday gift and it's gonna be way better than yours, believe it. Sasuke feels warm. He hasn't felt this warm in a very long time. There's a lot he wants to say, but all that comes out is, thank you. Sasuke doesn't have Naruto's bottomless pit of a stomach, so he only eats the one bowl of ramen, but Ayam gives him some free daifuku for dessert. Sasuke would usually just give them all to Sakura, but he finds himself eating half of one while staring back at Ayam's expectant smile. Sakura has to go home before her mom starts to worry, so she breaks off from them early, waving until she's out of sight. Kakashi and Naruto walk Sasuke home. Kakashi jokes about Naruto and Sasuke having a sleepover, but Naruto wrinkles his nose at that and makes some untrue remarks about Sasuke's grooming and laundry habits. Sasuke's not in too much of a daze to shoot back that he doesn't want Naruto stinking up his apartment either. As they leave him at his door, Naruto calls over his shoulder, remember jackass, I'm definitely getting you a birthday present, whether you want one or not. Believe it. Sasuke waits until he's all the way inside and sitting on his bed to unwrap Sakura's present, and even then he takes a moment to just admire the wrapping paper. He looks for where she's taped it at the seams and carefully undoes the tape, trying to tear as little as possible, but that's how he always opens presents. He places the wrapping paper on his nightstand and takes the lid off the box. Inside is an absolutely beautiful tanto knife in a deep blue wooden sheath with a same-go-wrapped hilt. Sasuke takes it in his hands like it's a newborn baby bird and carefully draws it. The blade is sharpened to a razor edge and shines in the moonlight, with a notare hamen sweeping gracefully along the blade edge. And as if this blade wasn't perfect enough, he turns to look at the base of the pommel and he sees the Uchiha crest emblazoned in it. It's only now that Sasuke notices the note sitting beneath where the knife had been in the box, written in Sakura's crisp handwriting on a small piece of cardstock. Sasuke carefully, reverently sets the tanto down beside him and picks up the note. Sasuke. I've hopefully said this before by the time you read this, but, happy birthday. I wasn't sure what to get you since you don't really have hobbies you talk about, so I got you something you can use. I can't imagine you've had many good birthdays in the past 5 years, and I'm sorry if that just dredged up bad memories, oops. Nevertheless, I wanted to make this birthday a good one for you, and I hope I can make all the ones to come good too. Love, Sakura. Sasuke reads the note over and over again for a good 2 minutes. Then he sets one hand on his injured knee, and soft cyan chakra glows brief and bright from his palm. Sasuke knows one thing for certain: he wants to get back out on the field. He wants to go back to doing missions again, even if they're just deer-anks pulling weeds and rescuing lost cats. Like Naruto said, it's been forever. And forever is too long. Chapter 7. It's during her 3rd week of training when Sakura speaks to Gaara for the first time. Usually after a long day of training with Kakashi or Kurane, she drags herself home, shoves her face full of food so she won't have to answer her mother's questions about her training, pulls her carcass up the stairs and passes out the second she touches her bed. She thought nothing short of her house catching fire could wake her before dawn. A conspicuous thump on her roof proves her wrong. Sakura is up and out of her bed before she can convince herself it's none of her business, suddenly glad she fell asleep in her gear as she grabs a kunao on instinct. Her time with Kurane shows its efficacy as she comes up to her balcony and quickly casts 2 genjutsu, one to mask the sound of her sliding glass door she opens it, another to make her invisible by reflecting her surroundings over her body. She's learned that it's not much help if she moves too quickly. Just as she starts creeping out her door and starts tracing the perimeter of her balcony counterclockwise, her visitor drops down right in the middle of it. And Sakura has to bite her own tongue to keep from gasping, because Gaara of the desert is crouching in the middle of her balcony. He doesn't appear to have seen her, but as he slowly brings himself up to stand at his full height, his dark ringed eyes slowly scan back and forth from one end of Sakura's room to another. There's only one reason he's here: he's looking for her. And if he doesn't find her, a jolt of cold fear lances up Sakura's spine. She suddenly remembers the day she came home from the hospital. In stark clarity, her mom had hugged her so tight it hurt when she came through the door, since Kakashi had told her just enough to worry her, and Sakura had lied to her for the first time in her life about exactly what had happened while her mom had nervously futzed with her dull pink, nearly brown hair. Sakura had caught up on her chores and the neighborhood gossip. She'd helped her mother cook dinner. They'd watched an old favorite movie that made them laugh so hard they cried. Sakura had fallen asleep on the couch and woken up tucked in bed. Gaara starts to carefully move towards her door. Sakura doesn't even think as she darts around to block his path. Sakura releases the genjutsu, melting back into full view and staring him down. It's rude to go into a girl's room without asking. Gaara blinks rapidly, probably the only sign Sakura was going to get that she surprised him. Are you really that arrogant? You could have lived if you'd stayed hidden. Sakura shrugs. Yeah, I could have. But then you would have gone downstairs looking for me and found my mom. I'm not going to risk you hurting her. Sakura imagines if Gaara had eyebrows they'd be furrowing right now. Why does she matter? You're the one in striking range. As if to prove that point, sand comes creeping out of Gaara's gourd in a slow stream, twisting onto the ground and around Sakura's feet. She stands her ground despite the block of ice that flash freezes in her stomach, mind playing all her imaginings of how Lee's battle with Gaara had gone so disastrously wrong. She'd cooked up as Kakashi had told her the risks ahead. If she couldn't face it now, she'd never face it during the exam, and then she'd be dead for certain. Assuming he doesn't just kill her right here. Sakura cocks her head to the side like this is any other boy in her life asking her a stupid question. She matters because she's my mother and I love her. I'll bet you don't have friends, but you probably have family. You have to understand that much. His face twists into a scowl as he quite plainly says, no, I don't. I don't understand any of you people. You least of all. He retracts the sand and stalks closer to her, Sakura taking a step back for every one he takes forward until she's back across the threshold of her sliding glass door and he's just on the other side. Sakura could slam it in his face, but any sudden moves feel like they could provoke him. It's like dealing with a frightened horse. Gaara almost mirrors her in how he cocks his head to the side, eyes moving from her feet to her hair as he studies her. He leans in closer and she leans away. What are you? He finally asks. The question is so completely out of left field that Sakura can't help a startled chuckle, but that makes Gaara lean back and blink rapidly again, so she quickly stifles it. I'm a person? A shinobi? A kunoichi? I really don't know what answer you're looking for, Sakura replies. Gaara shakes his head, eyes narrow now. You are nothing. No clan, no tailed beast, no handicap. You live in a civilian house, in a civilian neighborhood. You should be nothing. But you made it this far, so you can't be. So, what are you? Sakura just stares at him, jaw hanging open. If this was any other boy, except maybe Sasuke, she'd already be shouting at him, punching him so hard he flew off her balcony, but since this is Gaara she can only stare. Let him know exactly who you are, sweetie. The voice barely needs to convince her. Sakura squares her shoulders and looks Gaara in the eye. I'm everything you said. My mom's family is civilian, sometimes ninja pop up, my aunt was one, my great-grandma was one, but most of the time they're just civilians. So is my dad's, but I'm not the best person to ask about him. I'm clanless, nobody sealed a tailed beast in me, and I'm pretty capable of doing most things a shinobi should be able to do. I'm also top of my graduating class in the academy, a member of Team 7, Tsubaki Harano's daughter, and a ninja loyal to my village. That's what I am. And I'm going to be a lot more. Gaara stares at her for a minute or two before sneering and turning away, stalking towards the edge of her balcony, disappointing. Killing you will barely be worth the trouble. It will prove nothing. Sakura takes a step back over the threshold of her door, teeth grit, eyes slit into a glare. I'm not going to roll over and die, Gaara. I'm going to beat you. Gaara spares her one last look over his shoulder, ice blue eyes paralyzing in their gaze. You will try. He disappears in a rush of sand. It's the day before the final exam when Sasuke speaks to Gaara for the first time. Sasuke's at the hospital to visit Lee, but thanks to the receptionists who have become very used to him, he learns that Naruto was admitted 3 days prior. Apparently he'd been found beside the giant footprint right outside the hospital door, asleep with a doofy grin on his face, and hadn't woken up since. He wasn't comatose, they knew that for a fact because he had been snoring so loud people had been asking if there was construction happening in that wing. Sasuke has to admit, privately, that maybe Naruto wasn't lying about being trained to summon toads. Sasuke comes into the room to find Shikamaru already at Naruto's bedside, playing shogi against himself. For a couple seconds they just stare at each other. Sasuke breaks the silence. Hey. Shikamaru raises an eyebrow. Hi. Sasuke nods towards Naruto. How is he? Shikamaru shrugs, sleeping like a log. Sasuke nods again, pursing his lips. Right. There's another long silence before Shikamaru asks, you play shogi? All the time against Itachi, which he always lost, not much these days. Shikamaru wags his head towards the board. Wanna play? He does, not really. Shikamaru shrugs. Alright, just as well, I'd probably beat you anyway. Sasuke is pulling up a chair and settling down across from Shikamaru with a scowl on his face. Set up the damn board. Shikamaru smirks as he does. No cheating, Sherry non-boy. They're 10 minutes deep into a game he's losing when Sasuke notices it. The sand in the hourglass has stopped moving. Shikamaru notices it a fraction of a second later, and the two of them lock eyes across the board. Sasuke knows this can only be one person's doing. That's weird. Shikamaru nods. If it is him, they need to tread carefully, maybe they just forgot to wind it. Naruto starts to stir and they go back to their game like nothing's wrong. They don't even need to talk around that problem. Naruto knowing and making a production out of everything would turn it from potential disaster into actual disaster, so they pretend like everything's normal. Naruto rolls over to look at them through bleary eyes and Shikamaru grins over at him. Look who's back in the world of the living. Sasuke grimaces. There goes my quiet afternoon. Naruto rubs at his eyes, yawning. Shikamaru? Sasuke? Where is this? The hospital, dumbass, Sasuke replies, shrugging. You've been out for 3 days. Naruto's eyes go wide and Sasuke's squeeze shut. Wrong choice of words. Naruto's up and grabbing both of their collars as he shouts right into their ears. Are you serious? 3 days? When's the final exam? Shikamaru barely manages to choke out, it's tomorrow. And Naruto is now bellowing, tomorrow. Why didn't you assholes wake me up sooner? I can't be lying around at a time like this, I've gotta be getting ready. And where's the pervy sage, that old bastard's supposed to be? Calm down, kid, get a grip. Shikamaru snaps as he tries to wrench out of Naruto's grip. He doesn't know what the hell you're talking about, Naruto, Sasuke snaps, physically pulling Naruto off of him. Naruto turns to shout at him, but his eyes immediately catch where Sasuke has his tanto fastened at his hip and they switch from burning with anger to sparkling with awe. Holy crap, Sasuke, where did you get that? Naruto asks, letting go of Shikamaru and crawling over to get a better look. I wanted to know about that too, now that you mention it, Shikamaru remarks, leaning back in his chair. Looks fancy. Is that an old Uchiha heirloom? Sasuke feels the smile on the very edge of his lips as he replies, actually, this was a birthday present from Sakura. I have no idea how she paid for it, but I'm not complaining. Naruto groans and throws his head back so hard he falls onto his back. Of course she got you something super fancy. How the hell am I supposed to top that? Shikamaru snorts, of course she got you a weapon. Do you have any hobbies? Sasuke frowns, why would I tell you about them? Naruto snickers, I'll bet they're old man stuff like building ships in bottles or collecting stamps. Shikamaru just blinks at Naruto, what's so bad about those? Naruto cackles, oh my god, you guys are secretly 60 years old. How did you get so boring? Sasuke's smart remark is drowned out by Naruto's stomach growling like an angry tiger, and Sasuke quickly changes gears. Holy shit, Naruto, is part of your training starving yourself? Screw you, I've been sleeping for 3 days. I can't eat when I'm asleep. Naruto shoots back, clutching his stomach self-consciously. Good thing I'm here, Shikamaru says as he picks up a fruit basket from under the shogi table and sets it on Naruto's bed. I brought these for Koji, but the doctors say he can't eat it, so you might as well dig in. Sasuke turns to Shikamaru with a quirked eyebrow as Naruto immediately picks out an apple. Why is Koji here? Training accident. He wishes, Shikamaru replies. Asuma's been taking him out to barbecue after every day of training and all those short ribs caught up with him. It's just indigestion, super bad indigestion, sure, but still indigestion. Sasuke shakes his head with a sigh, of course that's it. He perks up as Naruto starts snickering beside them. Hey, guys, I have a great idea, let's take this into Koji's room and eat it in front of him. Shikamaru stares at Naruto blankly. Naruto, that is needlessly cruel. Then he smirks, I'm in. Sasuke shrugs, shogi was getting boring anyway. As Naruto finds his shoes, Sasuke packs up the shogi board and makes sure to glance at the hourglass. It still hasn't moved. He and Shikamaru exchange looks while Naruto's back is turned. It's a bad sign. But they'll cross that bridge when they come to it. They come out into the hallway, Shikamaru leading the way to Koji, and Naruto folds his arms behind his head as he looks over at Sasuke. You're walking a lot faster than you were back on your birthday. Do you even need that crutch anymore? Sasuke tenses for a hot second and has to talk himself down. Naruto doesn't know about what you've been doing, even if he did he won't tell anyone. Calm the fuck down, Sasuke, you're just making yourself look even more suspicious. So he rolls his eyes and elbows Naruto in the ribs, shooting back, yeah, I need it to whack you if you keep being annoying. I'm not gonna have my knife's first blood be yours. Naruto sticks his tongue out like they're still in the academy. Good luck hurting me with that wood doesn't even look that heavy. Girls, you're both pretty, Shikamaru grouses from in front of them. I'd really like to actually make it to Koji's room and not get thrown out of the hospital. That gets Sasuke and Naruto to behave. For now. They pass Sasuke's old room and it dawns on him why he came here in the first place. He's about to broach the subject of popping in to see Lee when they pass right by his door, and Sasuke gets a glimpse inside. Lee's resting in bed and he has a visitor looming over him. Sasuke has to bite his tongue to keep from swearing out loud, because that visitor is Gaara. This time when Sasuke elbows Naruto in the side it's enough to hurt him and Naruto almost yelps before Sasuke slaps his hand over his mouth and points insistently at the doorway. Naruto and Shikamaru follow his arm and both freeze, eyes going wide. Shikamaru immediately makes the standard leaf shinobi hand signals for what's the plan. Naruto insistently punches his own open palm, the standard Naruto hand signal for go in there and beat the shit out of him. Sasuke chews on his lip as he struggles to think of a plan, keeping an eye on Gaara from the corner of his eye. Good news is Gaara hasn't spotted them. Bad news is that Gaara is starting to clutch at his own head and hunch over and make pained noises, so he needs to think of one fast. Sasuke takes his hand off Naruto's mouth and points to Shikamaru before going through the hand signs for shadow possession jutsu, then pointing to Gaara. He then points to himself and Naruto and uses both hands to mime them flanking him. Shikamaru looks to Naruto, who just shrugs, and once again makes the standard Naruto hand signal for go in there and beat the shit out of him. Shikamaru rolls his eyes and nods to Sasuke, creeping forward on silent feet. Naruto and Sasuke wait on bated breath, eyes darting between Shikamaru as he tries to line himself up with Gaara's back and Gaara as the noises he's making become less pained, more crazed. The cork falls from Gaara's gourd and sand starts spilling out, quickly reaching for Lee as Gaara thrusts one hand out, prepared to clench it into a cruel fist. Sasuke's Sharingan springs to life as he harshly whispers, now. Shikamaru's hands fly through the signs and his shadow slides across the floor like it's made of ice. Sasuke's dropped his crutch and is racing in, Naruto following his lead and going around Shikamaru's other side. Sasuke skids to a halt on Gaara's right, drawing his tanto and brandishing it with an unpracticed hand. Shikamaru's shadow connects and Gaara freezes, allowing Naruto to wheel around from the other side and clock Gaara with a right hook. "The hell do you think you're doing in here, you bastard?" Naruto shouts as he brings his fist back and drops into his slouched, almost animalistic fighting stance. Sasuke's eyes flicker down to Lee. If Naruto's voice didn't wake him, then he must be under some anesthesia from a surgical procedure. Sasuke knows there's no way he could sleep through Naruto's squalling. Shikamaru recoils from the blow in perfect sync with Gaara, bringing a hand up to his cheek as he snaps, "Watch it, Naruto. If you hit him, you hit me." Naruto winces, "Right, sorry." Instead of a bruise on Gaara's cheek, it cracks and grains of sand drip like blood. He's eyeing the three-leaf genin with a calm, mask-like expression on his face, like he hadn't just been having some sort of mental breakdown. Sasuke slits his eyes in a glare as he says, "You're surrounded and outnumbered. Tell us what you're doing here or else." Gaara turns to Sasuke and examines him with his eerie pale blue eyes before his upper lip curls in a sneer. "What happened to you?" Sasuke can only blink. "What?" "When these exams began, I saw your eyes," Gaara hisses. "They were full of hatred. It's what drove you. You were just like me. But now, you're burying it. Have you really gotten so weak that you've given up?" Sasuke takes a sharp breath in through his clenched teeth, his Sharingan starts spinning, and his blade is almost at Gaara's throat when Shikamaru shouts, "Sasuke, stop." He stops. He's so close, an errant twitch could have steel meeting sand, but Sasuke holds his blade there in his white-knuckled grip as he shakes all over, jaw clenched so tight his teeth might break. He looks at Gaara's infuriatingly calm face, and all he can see through the red filter of his Sharingan is attack. "Tell me why you're here," Sasuke growls, his own voice feeling like sandpaper against his throat. Gaara's eyes sweep from Sasuke down to Lee as he answers simply, "I was going to kill him." "Are you serious?" Shikamaru exclaims, voice painted in a thick glaze of disgust. "Crippling him wasn't enough? Are you that mad he managed to land a hit on you in front of everyone?" Gaara's eyes narrow, the most expression he can make while Shikamaru controls his body. "I don't see why it has to be so complicated. I just want to kill him, that's all." Sasuke manages to get back some of his composure as he spits, "It's never that simple. You're sick in the head, you know that." Naruto shouts, widening his stance so he blocks even more of Lee from Gaara's sight. "If you don't get out of my way, I'll kill all three of you, too," Gaara says, almost sounding polite despite the slithering undertone of his voice. Shikamaru puts on a pretty good fake smirk despite the sweat running down the side of his face. "Did you not hear Sasuke before? You're outmanned, and after this month of non-stop training I'm pretty damn sure you're outgunned too. Not to mention we're in the middle of a shinobi hospital. Even if you did get past us, you'd be found out and hunted down in seconds. Just be smart and walk away." Now that Gaara's said it, it's all that Sasuke can think about. Boiling just under the surface of Gaara's armor is the same kind of toxic hate that drove Sasuke and is still simmering in a lump caught right in his throat. Sasuke's is just for one person. Gaara's is much, much larger. Shikamaru's bluff is a good way to buy time, but nothing short of death is going to make Gaara stop. Sasuke would put a lot more stock in that thought if it wasn't taking all of his willpower not to slaughter Gaara himself. "This is your last warning," Gaara rasps. "If you want to live, get out of my way." Naruto snorts, all bravado as he shouts back, "And this is your last warning, stop running your mouth and leave Lee alone if you don't want all your bones broken." Shikamaru finds himself the only voice of reason in the room. "Cool it, Naruto. We don't want to go there. This guy is nuts, he fights like a demon." Naruto's grin takes on a bizarre edge as he barks, "Ha, sure he can fight like a demon, but I've got the real thing inside me. We'll see who wins against that." Sasuke completely forgets Gaara, Lee, and even Shikamaru. His eyes go wide and he brings his blade down, and he's suddenly putting together dozens of pieces of evidence he hadn't even known were evidence. The scars on Naruto's cheeks certainly do look like whiskers. It was always odd how adults, even reasonable ones like his own mother, would look at him with such a burning hatred when Naruto's greatest crime was minor vandalism. He did remember thinking it sucked for Naruto that his birthday was the same day as the Nine Tails attack. It was strange how the history books never mentioned who the third Jinchuriki for the Nine Tails was, since the second had unfortunately passed away. He has foggy Memories of as he lay in critical condition from Haku's attack, Naruto's eyes turning red. Oh god damn it, he is a fucking idiot. He looks to Shikamaru, who's showing clearly on his face that he's thinking much the same thing. But when he looks to Gaara, his face is blank. But his eyes have changed. There's something in them like excitement. I see, Gaara murmurs, you're like me then. Now it's Naruto's turn to freeze, huh. Evidently, Gaara is all too happy to explain, I've been killing since the day I was born. To ensure the sand villages might, my father used his ninjutsu to infuse me with a sand spirit while I was still in the womb. It killed the woman who gave birth to me and I was born a monster. Its name is Shukaku. Everyone in the room is reeling, but none more than Naruto. All his bravado is gone and he's just staring at Gaara now, caught between horror and a sort of dawning realization. He looks like he's going to be sick. Who the hell would do that to a baby? Shikamaru blurts out, but he already knows the answer, the same sort of people who'd done it to Naruto. I guess we can rule you having a loving family right out, Sasuke mutters, gathering all his resolve to ignore how his palms are sweating and his knee is begging him to take his weight off it and go find his crutch. He doesn't need this right now. Gaara's mouth twists into a bizarre, carnival mirror reflection of a smile. You're right, Sasuke. My family is one bound together by hate. My father has sent countless assassins after me. I'm not his son, I'm his experiment gone horribly wrong, and it's his duty as Kazekage to dispatch threats to the village. The village I was supposed to protect. I had failed in the mission assigned to me at birth and lost my purpose. What point is there in living without one? Existing with no reason? It's the same as being dead. Sasuke is starting to feel very cold. I found my own answer, eventually, Gaara continues, almost like he's talking to himself. It was death that gave me life, and it is death that sustains me, that proves I exist. I live only for myself, I love only myself, and so long as there are people for me to kill I will never disappear. Life is taken and in doing so life is given. If he dies the pain will die with him and everything will be born again. It makes sense. Sasuke hates that it makes sense. Naruto takes a step back, away from Gaara. All his fear and disgust and sympathy might as well be written in red ink all over his skin. Shikamaru turns to him, well in a panic by now. Hey! Where are you going? Sasuke's already checked out. I can't lose you too. Sand surges up around Gaara and blasts outward, knocking Sasuke into the wall and Naruto to the ground. The shock is enough that Shikamaru's concentration falters for a second, and that second is all it takes for the shadow possession jutsu to sputter out like a weak flame. Sasuke's shoulder and leg cry out, but he can't afford to listen to them as the sand roars in his ears and Shikamaru shouts for both him and Naruto to get it together. All he can hear is one thought, louder than anything else, as Gaara's sand surges towards them. There is no way they can beat him. All right, that's enough. The deep and authoritative voice makes everyone stop in their tracks and look towards the door. Even Gaara's sand abruptly comes to a halt and drops down to the ground. Sasuke had never expected to be relieved to see Might Guy, but today is just full of surprises, and the feeling washes over Sasuke like a wave as Guy stands in the doorway and stares down at Gaara with a stern look in his eyes. Save it for tomorrow, boys, that's when the real competition starts, he says as he strides into the room. You're just wasting it today, is that what you want? Out of nowhere Gaara cringes and clutches his head, making those same crazed, agonized groans of pain from before the three-leaf genin had caught him. His sand races back into his gourd and it takes him nearly 30 seconds to regain the bare minimum of composure necessary to drag himself out of the room, glaring through slitted eyes at them while one hand stays buried in his short red hair. He only pauses at the door, leaning on it with his free hand, and glaring daggers over his shoulder at them all. It doesn't matter when I will kill you. All of you. Sasuke doesn't sleep much that night. And by Sasuke's standards not much equals not at all. He eats a pitifully small breakfast, dresses in street clothes, sends a short jolt of healing chakra through his knee, brushes his teeth and keeps his eyes locked on the dark bags underneath them, which do not make him feel any better. He walks to the stadium, leaning heavier on his crutch than he has to. It's been quite a while since he's had this singular feeling of being alone in a crowd, especially one as raucous as the one the final exam festival has drawn. When had it stopped? He climbs the arena stairs and finds a seat not too close to the front and not so far he can't see. People are still filtering in and the proceedings aren't due to start for another 20 minutes at least, so Sasuke's trying to think of something to fill time so he's not alone with his thoughts when he hears a familiar pair of voices squawking back and forth at each other as they filter in. Sasuke turns just in time to catch a glimpse of Naruto waving at him as he walks into the seating area. "Hey there, jackass. How'd you beat us here on a bad leg?" Naruto indeed has not come in alone. He and Kiba are flanking Hinata, who is doing a very poor job of hiding her delight. Sasuke smirks at her and raises an eyebrow. She turns tomato red and Sasuke can't hold back a snicker. "Since when do you three hang out?" Sasuke asks as they filter down to his row, Hinata and Kiba settling down next to him. Kiba snorts and Akamaru woofs, "Since Orange Juice here got lost on his way to the arena and ran into Hinata waiting for me." "Forget about us. Since when are you and Hinata friends?" "She told me you guys hung out in the hospital. What's that about?" Hinata frowns slightly as she softly reprimands Kiba. I already told you, Sasuke and I used to spend time together when we were little." We're catching up." Sasuke's still amazed. She remembers that far back. But she doesn't need to forget the happier parts of her childhood. Sasuke's about to drift off when Naruto grins at him and gestures with his thumb towards the cheap seats. "Hey, come with me, I wanna talk to you about something." Sasuke tenses. Is it Gaara? Sakura? Whatever it is, Naruto can't say in front of Kiba and Hinata. Anything he wants to keep secret is probably worth keeping under wraps. Sasuke nods. "Alright. Save my seat, Hinata." She purses her lips, pressing her fingers together. "Oh okay, don't be too long." Naruto takes Sasuke by the shoulder and all but drags him away as he calls, "Don't worry, he'll be back before you know it." They go up past the cheap seats and into the tunnels connecting ground level to the stands, not stopping until Naruto's dragged them into an alcove for a service stairwell and Sasuke physically pushes him off. "Alright, what is it?" Naruto doesn't answer with words. He instead answers by shoving something in Sasuke's face so fast and so close that he can't tell what it is without pulling back. It's a bracelet. A pretty nice looking bracelet made out of dark blue stone beads, but still a bracelet. Yeah, I know it's not as nice and expensive as Sakura's present, but Sakura doesn't need to pay rent and buy all her own groceries, Naruto says, taking Sasuke's free hand and shoving the bracelet past it to rest comfortably on his wrist. "The lady at the store said these stones are good for healing and can help chakra flow, and you only wear blue or white or black so they fit with the rest of your crappy clothes." Sasuke tries to frown around a building smile. "And you're sure she wasn't scamming you?" Naruto blinks at him, uncomprehending. "Nah, she seemed like she knew her stuff. She had a white lab coat and everything." Sasuke lets out a soft laugh through his nose as he looks over the bracelet. The stones have been polished to an almost mirror sheen and their weight isn't cumbersome. It doesn't even look half bad. He could get used to wearing it. He nods. "I like it." Naruto's grin sticks around for a second more before his face drops into an oddly pensive expression, and he says, "Good. Okay, so I'm just gonna say this, and I'm only gonna say it once, and then we'll go back to calling each other jackass and loser and we don't have to talk about this ever again, alright?" "You got it." Sasuke quirks an eyebrow. "Yeah? I got it." Naruto nods, jaw set, eyes resolute. "I saw how Gaara shook you up, so I wanted to give you that because we're not him. We're lucky, because we don't have to be. We have our team and our friends in our village and he doesn't have anyone. And he's wrong. Sasuke, you're one of the strongest guys I know. Because you care about Sakura and Kakashi and Lee and Hinata and even me. You care about people and you don't give up. That's what makes you Sasuke, not your family or your eyes or killing the guy who hurt you. That's what makes you strong." Sasuke's throat aches as he murmurs, "My brother. It was my brother who hurt me. He killed our clan. All of them. Even our parents." Naruto jolts back, eyes wide and jaw hanging open. Sasuke's shrug is weak but his smile strong. "You told me about your demon, even if you didn't mean to. Thought you should know the name of mine." "Thanks, Naruto. For what it's worth, you're one of the strongest guys I know, too." Naruto grins wide and holds his fist up. Sasuke just stares at it, eyebrow raised. Naruto groans and grabs Sasuke's hand. forming it into a fist and forcefully bumping it into his. See? That's a fist bump. How have you never seen one? You are so bad at being normal. Sasuke snorts and cuffs Naruto on the shoulder. Are you serious? You're the furthest thing from normal, loser. Naruto sticks his tongue out at Sasuke. Nuh-uh, jackass. If we got into a normal contest I'd beat you by 1,000,000 points, believe it. Worry about the actual contest, dumbass. Sasuke laughs, taking Naruto by the shoulder and spinning him to face the corridor, pushing him out. Get going. You're gonna be late and they'll disqualify you. Shit, you're right. I gotta go, see you later. Naruto shouts, tearing off down the hall and nearly disappearing before he stops, turning to call over his shoulder, let's promise. We're not gonna let Sakura die. If Gaara gets out of control we'll help her. Believe it. And Sasuke, to his complete and utter shock and mortification, calls back, believe it. The second Naruto runs out of sight Sasuke buries his face in his palms and groans so loud they can hear it all the way in the sand village. He schleps back out into the stands and down to his seat, where Ino and Koji have settled in on the other side and greet him brightly. Geez, what's eating you? Ino asks, lightly shoving him, you look like someone told you your dog ran away. Sasuke just sighs, Naruto is a terrible influence. Sakura pauses so suddenly at the arena gate that Kakashi runs into her back. She whirls around and looks up at him with her big green eyes wide, her whole body trembling. I can't do this, sensei. Kakashi cocks his head to the side. You know, if you're going to get cold feet you could at least have the decency to have said something earlier. Sakura carries on like she didn't hear him, rambling as she runs a hand through her bangs. Who knows if any training is enough to take on Gaara? And I'm not like Naruto or Sasuke, I don't have any trick up my sleeve, at least not one I can use, and no one's here to see me. They'll probably all be going up to use the bathroom during my match, and... Breathe, Sakura, Kakashi says, using the calm, gentle voice he usually reserves for Sasuke, you're going to be fine. You've been training every day and you've grown so much we can't guarantee victory. But we can at least guarantee that you don't go down without giving as good as you get. And besides, Naruto, Sasuke, your mom and I are all going to be watching and cheering you on. You can do this. That's a promise. Sakura shuts her eyes, taking a deep breath in, holding it, and letting it out. Kakashi puts a hand on her shoulder and waits. You've got this, sweetie. You'll make Gaara feel every ounce of pain he's ever inflicted on others. When she opens her eyes again they shine like the edge of a blade. I'm not going to let him kill me. And I'll get him back for Lee. If I beat Gaara. I don't care if I lose after that. That's enough. Kakashi smirks, eye crinkling at the corner. I know I usually advocate for setting reasonable goals, but I have to remind you that if you did win the whole thing it would be great for my reputation. Sakura laughs as she kicks at his shin and he easily leans out of the way. It's a familiar game. Sakura knows she's swift enough to hit him and he knows he could get her back twice as hard. It's between her soft kick and his slow dodge where affection lies. Sakura turns on her heel, bangs flowing with her like water, beaming, come on, let's go. I've never been late for anything in my life and I'm not going to ruin that record here. She walks proudly into the arena, not late and not early, perfectly on time as the rest of the competitors filter down into the center of the arena. Naruto catches her eye and waves to her with both arms, so there's really nothing she can do for him but smile and walk over to stand with Shikamaru between them, in order of who's fighting when. Her sharp eyes catch that they have a new proctor, a lazy-looking man with a senbon resting between his teeth. Shikamaru and Naruto are muttering about that next to her when the proctor snaps at them to shut up and shape up for the crowd. The stands are packed, but at this height to Sakura they're little more than a roiling mass of loud color. She's sure if she concentrated she could pick out Sasuke or Ino or her mom, but it's probably better if she doesn't know where they are. She squares her shoulders and stands up straight, posture perfect and eyes facing boldly forward. She's going to make them proud. She's going to prove herself. And she's going to wipe the floor with Gaara. All right, the proctor says, turning towards the cage's box, let's get this party started. Chapter 8. As the proctor goes over the tournament bracket for the audience's benefit, Sasuke has to wince on behalf of Shikamaru. His match was dropped right in between Niji's and Gaara's, doomed to be the bathroom break fight. Shikamaru's smart and Tamari's fan techniques are intriguing, but if the rumblings of the people in the stands around him are any indication, no one's here to see them. More than Sakura or Naruto, Sasuke hears his own name making its way around the crowd. You're serious? The Uchiha's not in this. Read the program, he's not on there. No way. My friend who taught him at the academy said he was a prodigy. How'd he get knocked out? Hey, Neji and Gaara are tough, maybe he fought one of them in the preliminaries. Didn't you hear? Gaara permanently crippled his opponent and Neji fought his cousin Uchiha's sitting over there. He doesn't look permanently crippled to me. Sasuke doesn't realize he's grinding his teeth until a familiar voice remarks from the aisle, that's the easiest way to wear down enamel, you know. He turns to see Kakashi, smiling at him from behind the mask, and Sasuke mutters, it's either that or I start fighting everyone in this arena. That'd be interesting to see, but let's try to find a middle ground, Kakashi laughs. The exam starts off strong. Naruto and Neji's match brings the crowd to their feet, though Sasuke misses most of it because the stress of watching Naruto and Neji fight is enough to make Hinata start relapsing. He looks to Kakashi, eyes wide and desperate. Kakashi takes a moment, likely weighing the pros and cons of Sasuke's first real trial for his mystical palm jutsu being Hinata, before finally nodding. As Sasuke guides Hinata out of the stands and up the stairs, Kakashi follows them close behind, murmuring to Sasuke, don't overdo it, keep it to short bursts, and let her breathe. The trouble's in her heart. We don't want to make things worse. Sasuke keeps one hand on Hinata's wrist to feel her pulse as the other heals her, pausing any time he feels her heart rate go up even by one beat. He's learned to use his Sharingan and leading lines of chakra to feel out the problem areas and focus on them. He can't bring Hinata back to 100%, but he can at least stop this relapse. Reasonable goals, Sasuke. Kakashi had said it over and over again as he hacked away at the Chidori, and now he's saying it for him, which he hates only slightly less than the fact he parroted Naruto's catchphrase. When he finishes, Hinata smiles at him with a slightly wry edge to it, whispering around labored breaths, did you copy that when we were in the hospital? Sasuke rolls his eyes, like there was anything more interesting to do there. Kakashi asks Hinata if she'd like to rest here just a little bit longer or see the medics, and she vehemently refuses. Win or lose, she needs to be there for Naruto. Sasuke and Kakashi exchange amused glances behind her back. At least, they do until Kakashi's eye looks just over his head and suddenly narrows. Sasuke follows his gaze and his eyes meet the blank stare of an Umbu mask. What are the Umbu Black Ops doing here? Sasuke hisses to Kakashi as they proceed carefully down behind Hinata. There's 3 options I can think of, Kakashi murmurs, security against Gaara, security against Orochimaru, or that's an enemy posing as Umbu. Let's hope for the former 2. They come back just in time to see Naruto draw on a bright orange chakra source so powerful it sends a wave of wind through the crowd as it surges up around him. Neji and Naruto throw themselves at each other with so much force it craters the ground, and Naruto wins the day with a move so smart Sasuke's standing up along with Hinata as she forgets her shyness long enough to cheer for him. Naruto earns a standing ovation and receives it with ample enthusiasm and absolutely no grace. It's hard to see Neji's face in detail from this high up, and Sasuke can't hear anything too clearly over the roar of the crowd, but he almost looks thoughtful as he's stretchered out. Shikamaru and Tamari are indeed the bathroom break match, though that's no fault of theirs. In fact, it's an absolutely brilliant showcase of tactics as they move around each other in an elaborate dance of strategy and counter-strategy that eventually gets the crowd on the edge of their seats. Shikamaru gets Tamari dead to rights via an excellent use of the terrain, and his own shirt, then forfeits. Sasuke laughs under the raucous boos from the crowd and is certain that for irony's sake Shikamaru is going to make Chunin. But all the laughter dries up, because now it's Sakura's turn. There's a thick, smothering tension surrounding them all as Sakura takes the field. Ino is chewing her nails with fear in her eyes, though of who, Sasuke couldn't say. Kakashi is completely motionless, Hinata is pressing her fingertips together while chewing her lip, Akamaru is whining high and sharp, and even Guy and Lee can't lighten the mood as they come in just in time to see the match start. Sasuke's grip tightens on his crutch and he whispers, "Don't you dare lose, Sakura." The proctor brings his hand down like a flag, "Begin." He leaps back and Sakura immediately leaps in, chucking a handful of shuriken to cover herself as she sprints towards Gaara. A bank of sand comes in to catch them, another one rushing underneath it to grab Sakura's leg. The second it hits, she explodes into petals. The scenery flickers and drops away just behind them to reveal the real thing as she dives between the two banks of sand, rolling and coming up with a kunao in hand, slashing for Gaara's throat. A jet of sand grabs her wrist and the rest comes surging to meet it, wrapping around Sakura like a cocoon. Gaara clenches his fist and the sand collapses inward. Sakura does not explode into a rain of blood but a shower of petals. Sasuke's eyes go wide. What? That wasn't a petal illusion that was solid, he grabbed that. How did? Kakashi's voice has that musical lilt it always has when he's amused. Turn your Sharingan on. Don't want you missing anything. Sasuke's eyes blaze red and there Sakura is, an outline covered by the same invisible cloak jutsu she'd used to find her opening as she rolls around Gaara's feet and comes up behind him. Was that clone had a shadow? How did Sakura learn how to use shadow clone jutsu? Sasuke exclaims, eyes darting from her to Kakashi and back. She reads a lot of books, a rich feminine voice replies from beside Kakashi. Another cloak of chakra drops to reveal Kurane, smiling warmly down at the genin. Kakashi nods to her in acknowledgement while Kiba and Hinata jump at the sudden appearance of their sensei. Sakura has quite a lot of theoretical knowledge and a strategic mind, but she's frightfully average when it comes to her chakra. Well, she continues, that's why her control is so precise. If you only have so much, you learn how to make it last. When it came to teaching her how to apply those jutsu she'd read about, we made sure she knew how to do it wisely. Sakura is not like Naruto, she can't create a whole army of herself. But she does know how to make one shadow clone at a time and how to make that clone count. The chakra coating Sakura's body races down into her fist and it collides with Gaara's cheek as he whirls towards her, sending him skidding backward and cracking all the armor on the left side of his face. Lee's the first one to call out, beaming bright as sunlight, incredible. Sakura's taijutsu has improved tenfold, I am so proud of her. She has improved, but maybe not as much as you're thinking, Hinata remarks, and Sasuke turns to see she's activated the Byakugan as she watches the battle with her brows pensively knit. She channeled chakra into the blow and targeted a weaker part of the armor. I don't think she got as strong or as fast as you in just a month, Lee. Kakashi shrugs, that was never the plan. There wasn't time, we had to work with what was already there. Besides, there's no way Sakura would win by pretending to be Lee. Standard clones radiate out from Sakura in a staggered circle and rush Gaara, each covered by a petal illusion that bursts into a cloud of pink when Gaara's sand jolts up to hit it. Every time half of them are destroyed, Sakura takes another step back and sends another wave of clones and illusions to crash against the rising tide of Gaara's sand. Sasuke doesn't see what she's doing until she's hidden in the shade of the arena wall and the leftover petals from the illusions as they're pushed around by the force of Gaara's sand forms a veil, obscuring visibility and coalescing back into illusions that run out from the blushing storm only to hit more sand. All the sand and petals in the air obscure how the clones and illusions don't kick up dust or cast a shadow, and Sasuke can see Gaara's mouth drawing into a scowl as his eyes dart from clone to clone, illusion to illusion, trying to pick out the real thing. He looks back to the real thing, and Sakura's hands are flying through a sequence of signs he doesn't recognize. Dog, snake, monkey, ox, tiger. She dissolves out of sight like mist on the wind. Kakashi lets out a low whistle, so she's going for the kill right away. Kurane is glowing with pride, hands on her hips. Of course she is. It's the mark of any good genjutsu specialist. If a fight lasts longer than 5 minutes, you've lost. Or she's trying to make all the chakra she's using up count for something. Ino mutters around her nails as she chews them down as far as they'll go, eyes narrowed into slits. Roots burst out of the ground and wrap tight around Gaara, squeezing him hard enough to make his eyes go painfully wide and force a gasp out of his lungs. More roots come soaring up and twisting onto themselves to create a gnarled dead tree that grows around Gaara like a cage. His sand lashes about in a blind panic, searching frantically for the attacker, and Gaara writhes like a trapped rat in the tree's iron grip. Just above Gaara the tree's bark ripples so subtly Sasuke's sure only he and Hinata notice it before Sakura's torso melts out of the tree, looming above him with a kunao in one hand. Sasuke can only gape at the spectacle before him. First shadow clone jutsu, now binding death tree. How many books on Jonin level techniques is Sakura reading? Gaara finally catches sight of her a moment too late, and Sakura's other hand grabs his hair, wrenching his head back and exposing his throat as she primes her kunao to strike. No. She is just going to hit the sand armor. Lee exclaims, lurching forward and Guy gently holding him back. Kakashi smirks, just watch. A pulse of lime green chakra comes out of Sakura's hand, washes over Gaara's hair and down into his armor. There's an agonizing pause, and a layer of sand an inch thick explodes off of Gaara, exposing his pale flesh to the sun. Sasuke is audibly gasping and leaping to his feet. Of course, of course, of course, of course, of course. Sakura's chakra nature is earth and her control is surgically precise. She pulled the armor off of him. Gaara's eyes are wide and he's watching the sand hit the ground, mouth hanging open. And Sasuke is cheering with all the passion in the world and none of the shame. Take the bastard out, Sakura. Sakura takes half a second to grin before thrusting the kunai down towards Gaara's carotid artery. That's a half a second too long. Gaara bares his teeth as his sand finally gets a bead on her and arcs upwards with dizzying speed and zero coordination to slam into Sakura's chest. The force sends her flying several yards away and breaks her concentration on the genjutsu, the tree dissolving like mist and freeing Gaara to move of his own power for the first time this match as he skitters back to put even more distance between himself and Sakura. The sand follows at his heels like a devoted puppy. I can't fucking believe it. How could Forward blow her only chance like this? Now Gaara's gonna pop her like a grape. Ino wails, hands burying in her hair. Hinata clasps her hands over her chest to keep them from covering her eyes. Gaara makes a single hand sign, the most Sasuke's ever seen him make, and all his sand pools around him before it starts building up a thick, spherical shield. Sakura shakes her head to get her bearings just in time to see it and swears under her breath. She pushes chakra into her hands and feet and sprints across the arena, desperately trying to get to the shield before Gaara completely closes it. She comes so close, there's only a foot between her and the shield and she's priming her hands to grab it and tear it open again when spikes of sand shoot out from the bubble. Sakura's earth chakra can only dissolve 2 of the spikes and she has to double back, pivoting around to backpedal out of range. It's all the time Gaara needs to close the shield completely. Does he plan on squatting in there the whole fight? What a coward. Kiba snarls over Akamaru's frightened whining. A whirl of sand breaks off from the main shield, spinning up 6 inches above the dome and coalescing into one brown eye that swivels around to focus on Sakura. Sasuke's eyes narrow and he mutters, no. He's preparing something. Kurane clicks her tongue, shaking her head. She overextended herself with the binding death tree jutsu exhausted, she's too low on options. Kakashi smirks over his shoulder at her, spoken like a true genjutsu specialist. This isn't an assassination, it's a fight. The real test starts once your first strategy fails. We're going to find out right now if Sakura's ready to make Chunin. Sakura bites down hard on her lower lip to keep from grinding her teeth in frustration. She palms a kunai, coats it with chakra and tosses it at the bubble of sand. It clatters off like she'd thrown it at a stone, her probing lance of chakra managing to go through a foot of solid sand before dissolving. She turns her gaze up to the eyeball and is tempted to make the sort of gesture that will let Gaara know exactly how she's feeling. When a thought occurs to her. 2, in fact. That's just one eyeball, meaning Gaara sacrificed his depth perception in order to see her. And the amount of sand required to make a shell that thick means Gaara's definitely not wasting any on his armor. She grins, wide and ferocious. Absolutely protected her ass, he's left himself absolutely open. Sakura had meant to leave this fight with her chakra well at 75%, but the feat of knocking out invincible Gaara of the desert in the first round is worth bringing that goal down to 50, but no lower. She still wants to put up a good fight against Kankuro or Shino even if she doesn't win. Step 1 is easy. Sakura runs through the hand signs without even thinking, Ram Snake Tiger, and unleashes a bevy of clones covered by petal illusions to slam into the bubble, backing up to the point where the eye can no longer see her from a bird's eye view, while her clones every time they explode against the sand spikes that rush out to greet them send the chakra used to make them flowing back into the sand, gauging its thickness. Just as Sakura thought, it's thinner around the base, leaving a foot of room for Gaara to sit on the ground. Sakura has a window of a foot and a half. Step 2 will take her down to 60% while the eye is swiveling from one of her normal clones to another. Sakura summons a shadow clone and has it stand in front of her, perfectly mimicking her stance, before casting another invisible cloak on herself. The shadow clone follows her directions, casting a minor illusion jutsu to make it look like she's gathering metric tons of harsh green chakra in her hands before dashing around towards the back of the bubble. The eye hones in on the clone and follows her. Finally, Step 3 Sakura says a prayer as she runs through the hand signs, draws a kunao, and dives into the ground. She surges forward, using her chakra to shove the dirt back and away. If her eyeballed measurements of the distance are even a fraction of a centimeter off, she's dead. If she's too slow when she comes up out of the ground, she's dead. If she can't make the one, maybe two hits she has while in their count, she is absolutely dead. Not a damn thing for it, she's within her foot and a half window. She brandishes her kunao and breaches up and out of the earth. Earth-style rending drill fang. In the darkness Sakura just barely sees the tip of her kunao clip the bottom of Gaara's jaw, so she digs in as she comes rocketing up, slicing across his face from the corner of his jaw to the corner of his forehead before she hits the top of this bubble shoulders first and has to catch herself to avoid falling in Gaara's lap. This space is barely big enough for Gaara, let alone the two of them. She needs to kill him and kill him quick before she suffocates. Her eyes take a second to adjust and she sees Gaara, hands shocked out of a seal, eyes so wide they're about to bulge out of his head, shuddering all over like he's been dropped in ice water. Sakura finds his carotid artery and starts to thrust her kunao down just as Gaara's hands shoot out and close around her throat. Hinata's gasp and shriek of Sakura comes a half second before the sand shell falls in an unceremonious heap to reveal Gaara, face split by a bleeding line from jaw to forehead, bearing down on Sakura with his hands closed tight around her throat as he lets out an incoherent scream of rage, fear, and something animalistic that shakes Sasuke to his core. Sakura gasps for air and flails her blade wildly towards his neck, only to miss and bury the blade in his upper arm. Gaara just squeezes tighter and screams even louder. Sasuke almost doesn't notice the white feathers falling gently across his vision. His Sharingan just barely saves him. The feathers are pure chakra, and when they alight on the crowd, anyone they touch pitches forward, dead asleep in their seat. His vision starts to tunnel and he just barely brings his hands together to release the genjutsu. Just in time to see all hell break loose. There's an explosion of dark smoke from the cage's box so thick Sasuke can't see through it. The Umbu operatives leap from their seats and rush to the head of the stadium. Gaara's siblings vault over the railing of the competitor's box down into the arena and wrench Gaara off of Sakura. Sasuke can just barely make out the bright red of the Hokage's hat as he appears in the grasp of the Kaze cage atop the box roof, but he doesn't see it for long before sheets of swirling darkness rise up around them to create an opaque barrier one of the Umbu throws themselves against and bounces back covered in fire. As Kakashi Guy and Kurane start to run towards the fight, the Umbu that had caught Sasuke's eye earlier appears at the bottom of the stairs, 4 sound ninja leaping from the stands to flank him and block the Jonin's path. What? What's happening? Hinata exclaims, shocking Sasuke. Of course, her Byakugan was active for the fight, of course she'd break the genjutsu. Before anyone can tell her, there's a distant but incredibly loud crash. Sasuke's mind is working at triple speed, to be that loud but that far away it has to be the wall. Something's happened to the wall. Something has damaged or broken the Leaf Village's 7-story high 5-foot-thick stone wall. Sasuke feels like a damn idiot for ever worrying about the Chunin exams. Sakura can finally breathe again as Gaara's much stronger siblings tear him off of her, and for a moment she just lets herself flop to the ground, taking big, grateful gulps of air. But then she notices the lack of movement in the stands, the smoke and barrier over top of the cage's box, the loud, distant crash. Sakura rolls up to her knees, back to the world of the living and in an absolute panic. "Stop it, Gaara!" Temari cries, holding fast despite Gaara's violent thrashing. Gaara speaks, but it's not to her. "I have to, I must, kill her, kill her, kill her, kill her, kill her." Kankuro's strong arms keep Gaara from struggling out of his grasp, growling through gritted teeth, "It's not worth it, Gaara. We don't have time for this." "He's right, remember our mission." Temari pleads. Gaara tears his arm out of her grip and points his hand, poised to clench into a fist, at Sakura. "Out of my way, let me go." Their sensei drops in between Sakura and the Sand Genin, shouting over his shoulder, "What the hell are you three doing? The operation's already underway." Gaara drops to his knees like a bag of rocks and clutches at his head, making pained groans. The proctor appears a foot in front of Sakura, standing protectively in the way so Sakura has to crane her neck around him to see her erstwhile opponent. Sakura finally finds her voice as she starts to pick herself up off the ground. What's going on? Why won't anyone tell me? Gaara is doubled over now and Temari follows his every move, eyes focused on where Sakura's kunai is still sticking out of Gaara's arm. This is bad, the blade is in down to the hilt and he's almost completely drained of chakra. Kankuro's eyes go wide, but what about using that? Temari shakes her head, it's impossible. Their sensei's voice drips with contempt, you idiot, this is what you get for transforming before we got the signal. Kankuro's voice is rising as nervous sweat warps his face paint. Well, what do we do now? We need Gaara for this. What the hell is plan B? That gets their sensei to pause, taking a breath, and getting back some of his composure. There is no plan B. Gaara's our ace in the hole. You two will just need to get him out of here, see to his wounds, and once he's in better shape proceed with the plan. Kankuro and Temari don't need to be told twice, Kankuro picking up Gaara and the three of them leaping over the arena wall. Now it's just Sakura, the proctor, and the sand jonin. She slowly gets to her feet, never taking her eyes off of where Gaara and his siblings had disappeared. Let me guess, the proctor drawls around the senbon in his teeth, Orochimaru is either pulling the strings or footing the bill. Sakura's curse mark throbs painfully at the sound of that name and she only barely holds in a gasp. The jonin smirks, don't know, don't care. It's just you and me right now, let's have some fun. Sakura stands up straight and stares intensely at the proctor, sir, requesting permission to pursue and take down Gaara. He smirks at her over his shoulder, already acting like it's wartime. You'll make a damn fine shinin, Sakura. Permission granted and use of deadly force authorized. Stop them, no matter what it takes. Sakura nods with a quick yes sir, before she sprints after Gaara. One way or another, she's finishing their match. Sasuke barely has time to process the fact that Sakura has left the arena and Orochimaru is holding the Hokage hostage before the stands erupt into combat, Sound Ninja throwing themselves at the Leaf Jonin with reckless abandon. They crash against Kakashi, Guy, and Kurane like waves into rocks. Kurane hits them with anything from simple petal illusions to get them into striking range to genjutsu that hits their inner ear and throws them off balance, falling and knocking themselves out. Guy's strikes are hard enough to break bones and send Sound Ninja flying out of the stands and all the way to the arena floor. Kakashi is pure grace and finesse, deflecting and cutting down Sound Ninja with no wasted movement. Sasuke almost gets lost in watching them before a shuriken whizzes past his ear and he realizes he needs to get his head in the game. Sasuke takes Hinata by the shoulder and pushes her down, instructing her via hand signals to follow him as he starts crawling towards the far side of the stands. Negotiating around people's legs is a pain, but less painful than another errant shuriken hitting Sasuke's throat. Hinata has crested over the hill of initial shock and is completely silent as she follows close behind. They don't stop until Sasuke hears Kakashi say their names, loud and forceful. He pokes his head up just enough for Kakashi to see him. What is it? Kakashi looks over his shoulder to lock eyes with Sasuke, gaze intense. Go find Naruto, Shikamaru, and Shino. If they're asleep, break the genjutsu on them. Tell Naruto that we're finally getting another mission in A rank. You're going to track Sakura down and stop her, then await further orders. Both of you be smart and be careful. Kurane calls from her own battle not far away. You're still injured. If you don't think you can keep up, fall back and wait the danger out somewhere safe. There's no point in bravery if it just gets you killed. Why Yuri sending us off alone? Hinata exclaims, popping up beside Sasuke and immediately coming back down as Kakashi grabs a Sound Ninja flying at him and tosses them behind him, the body sailing too close to the genins' heads. Kurane smiles, not quite. Sasuke's furrowing his eyebrows, eyes sweeping over the crowd just as he notices the front of Kiba's jacket start to wriggle. Akamaru's little wet nose pokes out and he takes some experimental sniffs before carefully crawling out and dropping to the floor, running over to hop into Hinata's lap. Normally I'd send one of my own ninja hounds with you, but we don't have that kind of time, Kakashi says. Akamaru can track Sakura's scent. Now go, both of you. Sasuke frowns hard and shouts, don't you dare die here, before racing off with Hinata and Akamaru close behind. They make it up the stands and into the tunnels and quite literally run into Naruto and Shikamaru halfway to the competitor's box as they come around a corner. Shino is trailing behind them, almost out of sight. Naruto backpedals and looks at Sasuke with something close to genuine fear in his eyes. Sasuke. What the hell's going on? Not sure about that myself, Sasuke replies, but I know one thing, we've got a new mission. Chapter 9. Shikamaru opens his eyes and places his hands flat on his knees. Alright, here's the plan. The group of harried genin and one ninja hound look up from their muttered conversations, all eyes on him. Shikamaru sees Sasuke's eyes, still blazing with the Sharingan, and his hand on his injured knee pulsing every couple seconds with blue-green healing chakra. Oh, this is going to be a total drag. Shikamaru sighs as he begins. Hinata, Sasuke, you're gonna go scope out a safe location and signal us when you find it. We'll have one of Shino's bugs ride with you so you don't have to throw up a flare. Naruto, Shino, Akamaru, you're with me to find and stop Sakura. We'll signal Sasuke and Hinata and circle back around to where they've set up. Hit me with your objections. You are not benching me, Sasuke snarls, Tomo starting to ever so slightly spin around his pupils. I'm going after Sakura, whether it's according to plan or not. Shikamaru breathes in through gritted teeth, pinching the bridge of his nose and remembering exactly why Team 7 was so irritating. Sasuke, your leg is literally in a brace right now. And even if you could move at the pace we need, Hinata needs someone to cover her if your safe zone isn't so safe. Sorry Hinata, but your condition's way more precarious than Sasuke's. You need someone with you when you're under stress like this. Especially someone who can apparently heal. I'm fine, Sasuke snaps. I made it all the way here without my crutch, didn't I? I can keep up. If you're so worried about Hinata, you go with her. Shikamaru just glares at him. I remember what happened the last time you tried to fight while insisting you were fine. No one's gonna be able to stop the fight before you get killed this time. Whatever you're trying to prove, drop it. We don't have time for Uchiha pride. Naruto raises his hand like he's an academy student. Actually, maybe he should come after Sakura. Shikamaru raises an eyebrow. Make your argument. Naruto rubs the back of his neck. If Sakura's really set on taking out Gaara, Sasuke might be the only person she listens to. She definitely won't listen to me. And, Naruto purses his lips, eyes falling to the concrete. Something's been weird about Sakura since the Forest of Death. I don't know what it is, no one will tell me. But, he locks eyes with Sasuke. Sasuke knows what. He knows how to handle it. Shikamaru whirls to look at Sasuke, eyes wide. Are you seriously telling me that you guys still haven't told Naruto? Sasuke looks away. He'd just make a scene. This is life and fucking death, Sasuke. Shikamaru cuts him off. Even if she had whatever the hell that thing is under control in the arena, she could lose it at any point. For fuck's sake, Sasuke, she almost killed Ino. Twice. Oh, so now you're concerned about Gaara. Sasuke shouts, remember what he said to us in the hospital. He's willing to kill us. He was trying to strangle Sakura with his bare hands. If she loses it on Gaara, then he deserves it. Shikamaru is nearly on his feet now, and then who's next? Temari and Kankuro. Us if we get too close and she thinks we're trying to stop her. Sasuke is on his feet. She's not some kind of wild animal. She's... Enough. Hinata's voice rings out louder than they've ever heard it and echoes through the stone corridors. The boys can only gape at her as she coughs on the heels of her outburst, looking from each other to her and back again. Naruto scooches even closer to her side, hovering around her with naked concern on his face. Sasuke slowly comes back down and tries to reach out to heal Hinata, but she shakes her head, putting a hand up to stop him. He sits uselessly by, just staring at her as she finally calms down. Akamaru lets out a whine, nuzzling at her leg. Hinata wipes her bloody palm on her jacket like it's not worth twice as much as Shikamaru's house, and says in a steady voice, we don't have time for this. If Sasuke went with me, he'd be a liability. He's too upset about Sakura and he can't back down from a fight. Also, Shikamaru, you're low on chakra while Sasuke still has most of his, so you wouldn't be good for much fighting. You can come with me and relay any tactics to Shino through one of his bugs. Naruto and Sasuke may not remember the strategy, but Shino definitely will. Is that alright with everyone? The boys exchange sheepish glances before Shikamaru mutters, yeah, sorry Hinata. Hinata nods, getting gingerly to her feet as she adds, and Sasuke, please tell Naruto what you've been keeping from him. There shouldn't be secrets between teammates. One of Shino's bugs crawls out from his sleeve and onto his fingertip. He gently places the bug on Shikamaru's shoulder and he can just barely make out that Shino's making eye contact with him behind his shades as he rumbles, "Be careful with her. If she's crushed, I will know about it." Shikamaru just grimaces, yeah, I've got it. I'll be a perfect gentleman." Hinata gently picks up Akamaru and hands him to Sasuke, since her first two attempts of handing him to Shino or Naruto resulted in him growling like a small motor. Please, look after each other. Kiba will be devastated if anything happens to Akamaru." Sasuke struggles through trying to hold a dog for a couple seconds. Has he seriously never held a dog before? What is wrong with this kid? Settling on cradling him like a baby before Akamaru just lets out a frustrated woof and jumps up to perch on Sasuke's head. Naruto nods, resolve burning in his eyes. "Hinata, Shikamaru. Good luck. I swear, we'll keep Sakura from doing anything too stupid, believe it." Shikamaru just sighs, remembering the good old days when he thought Sakura was the smart one on this team, before he realized they were all headstrong idiots who just kept enabling each other. What a fucking drag. Shino is largely uninterested in everything Sasuke's telling Naruto about Sakura's curse mark, so while they follow Akamaru as he sniffs Sakura out through the forest, Shino makes sure to leave insect scouts behind them to watch their backs. They're simple creatures, but not so simple that they can't follow commands, and he leaves them with the parameter that they're to report back the second any human crosses through their field of vision. Shino spares a glance to Sasuke and Naruto. Sasuke talked a big game about being able to keep up on his injured leg, but he's making sure to either catch a branch like he's swinging off monkey bars with the arm that didn't have a shoulder dislocated recently, or hop on his unbraced leg when he has to push off a branch with his feet. It's impressive how well he's learned to compensate in so short a time. But Shino has to wonder how long he can sustain it. His precautions bear fruit a lot sooner than Shino would have liked, and he interrupts the conversation. "We're being followed." Naruto looks to him, blue eyes wide. "What? How right, bugs? How many are there?" Shino pauses to make sure he has his numbers right before answering. 9 of them, all of them sound. Considering they're following 3 12-year-olds and a dog instead of contributing to the larger invasion, likely they're after Sasuke or Sakura specifically. "We're probably dealing with Jonin-level ninja, Chunin if we're lucky." Sasuke clicks his tongue, glaring eyes. They're normal black so the Sharingan doesn't siphon away all his chakra. "We don't have time to set up a counter ambush. The only option is for someone to stay behind and buy time." Shino stops on the next branch he hits. "Alright then, I won't be long. Remember, if Akamaru starts whining that means you're close." Naruto tumbles to a halt, nearly bowling into Akamaru as he tries to stop on a nearby branch, turning around to look at Shino with pure shock on his face. "Wait a minute, Shino. That's 9 Jonin coming after you. There's no way. I'm the only one here who's barely used any chakra today." Shino cuts in, "And technically speaking, I outnumber them. I'm going to be fine, Naruto. I'll throw them off our trail and catch up to you, so just get going already." Shino wishes he was actually as confident as he's making himself sound. He's never taken on this many opponents by himself, even in optimal terrain where he can send them on wild goose chases while subtly draining their chakra. They're moving fast and tracking them with deadly efficiency. At this stage he's certain his colony isn't big enough to reliably distract 9 opponents. Statistics had never been the math class he excelled in, but he doesn't need to know that much of it to know his odds are incredibly poor. But there's no other choice. Sakura will only respond to Sasuke, and Naruto, despite his unskilled approach, has the raw power to at least delay a monster like Gaara. Neither of them has the patience or the restraint to do anything but slam headlong into these 9 ninja and die instantly. It has to be him. Akamaru's letting out a high-pitched whine, canine face contorted in a strange echo of human concern. Shino smiles behind his collar, and all this time he thought Akamaru didn't like him. That'll be a nice thought to take with him if he dies. "Look after them, Akamaru," Shino adds, "bite them if they do anything stupid." "No, wait, you'll be biting them constantly. Bite them if they try to do something too stupid to recover from." Akamaru's tail doesn't come out from between his legs, but it does start wagging. Naruto sets his shoulders and nods. "Remember, you promised. If you don't come back, I'll never forgive you. Believe it." The two genin and one dog leap off and Shino wonders when he ever promised Naruto anything. He shakes his head and leaps up into the treetops. There's work to do. He left females behind as scouts and had them attached to the 9 ninja as they passed, so it doesn't take him long to get a sketch of their position. 8 of them are traveling close together in a horseshoe formation just below the canopy while the 9th is several yards behind them up in the leaves, level with Shino. A contingency plan in case of a counter-ambush. He'll have to separate him from the pack first. It's a simple matter to make an insect clone and send it on a course to just barely pass the 9th sound ninja, but whether or not he'll take the bait is quite a bit more complicated. They're gaining quick, no time to think of another plan. Shino sends out the clone. The clone passes the straggler and there's a tense heartbeat of a moment where all Shino can do is wait, barely breathing. The straggler stops and the main squad pauses a half-second later. Then they scatter. Shino bites his lower lip. Plan A is a bust. If he had to guess, they've gotten wise to his delay tactic, if not the details of it. Time to be a bit more direct. Shino keeps his focus on the clone and orders it to slow down, little by little, before losing its shape and wheeling back around to mob the straggler. There's another deadly pause before the bugs start filling up with chakra and he hears a blood-curdling scream. He feels the swarm make an abrupt drop to the forest floor, and 2 of the 8 remaining sound ninja go running towards the straggler. Shino maybe has a minute before the 2 of them make it there and burn off a sizable portion of his colony, so he leaps straight to the swarm. He manages to make it in time to recall them. The straggler is still in shock from so large a chunk of his chakra being taken in so short a time, so Shino has time to toss a shuriken and slice his carotid artery wide open. He does not have enough time to do that and hide again before the 2 members of the sound squad make it there, look down at their fallen teammate, then look up and immediately spot him. One of them narrows his eyes, so this is the one they left behind. Kabuto, give us a file on him. The other shakes his head. No, but I've got a handle on the Leaf Clan's dark glasses, big coat, creepy, no doubt he's an Abarame brat. Their thing is bugs, so. Shino doesn't let him finish, throwing a volley of shuriken before he leaps back into the canopy. He can hear them deflecting the projectiles and swearing at him before they leap up into the trees, hot on his tail. He plots his course carefully, making sure to cross the line of sight of the other 6 sound ninja and throw a shuriken for each one he passes to goad them into giving chase. Shino's mission is simple, keep them from following Sasuke and Naruto. Scattered like they are, one could easily pick up on their trail and tell the others they can't do that if they're all chasing him down. Once he confirms they're all on his tail, Shino starts looking for a clearing to drop down into. Death's basically a certainty at this point, and he's oddly at peace with it. Kurane taught them how to kill and in doing so taught them how to die. Her words echo in his mind, the best way to go is in service to your comrades and your village, and while taking your enemy down with you. Shino sends a bug away to meet Sasuke and Naruto and show them the way back to Hinata and Shikamaru. There'd be no point in this death if he left his comrades stranded. He lands on the far side of the clearing and pivots around to stand and face his opponents, all 7 of them landing on the opposite side and glaring down their noses at him. Shino's eyes narrow. 7? He counts a second time, a third, reaches out to the 8th female beetle, and she's gone. Shino's mind is racing as his swarm rises up and out of his sleeves, floating around him like angry storm clouds. Did the 8th man crush her? Is he hiding up in the trees right now? Did he find Naruto and Sasuke's trail? Kiba is going to kill him in the afterlife if one of them catches up and harms even one hair on Akamaru's head. Shino steels himself. He's gonna try his best to live, because he is not going to die a failure. One of the men on the side sneers, too bad, little bug boy, we're gonna crush you like one of your peaugh. Something long, thick, and green wraps around his neck and yanks him up into the trees. Shino hears an unmistakable snap and the body falls back down like a broken toy. Before the 6 remaining ninja can even react, 2 more snakes, these ones white as snow and as long as the ninja are tall, come racing out from the shadows and constrict around 2 more, one coiling up to squeeze down on his victim's neck until it snaps while the other bites down so hard on his victim's throat that not only are both carotid arteries cut wide open but the windpipe is crushed. Now that there are only 3, Shino finally gets a look at exactly who's come to his rescue as she slinks just a tiny bit out of the shadows. Wild hair pulled into something that might have started life as a bun. A long tan coat over mesh armor. pale brown eyes and a wicked smirk. Of all people, Shino could not in a million years have expected the proctor of the second exam Anko Mitarashi to be his hero. She throws 2 handfuls of senbon with pinpoint accuracy, all 4 of each finding their marks in the necks of 2 of the sound ninja. The last one spots her and whirls around, a kunao at the ready to tear into her. He strikes and Anko ducks easily under it, kiting around him as another dark green snake comes slithering out of her sleeve. Anko kicks his legs out from under him and the snake grabs him as he falls, wrapping up around his torso so its mouth is open and waiting right at his throat. Shino can only stare. Special Jonin doesn't seem like enough for her. She's an absolute artist. The sound ninja writhes in Anko's grasp, eyes wide in terror. Why are you doing this? You served Lord Orochimaru too. Her eyes narrow and she hisses, you answered your own question, genius. I'm not gonna let him hurt any more little girls. Now do me a favor and die. The snake buries its fangs in the ninja's neck and tears his throat clean open. He falls limp to the ground among his fellows and the snake shakes its head to get the blood off before slithering back up Anko's sleeve and out of sight. When she looks back to Shino, that big grin that reminds him far too much of Naruto is shining at him like the sun and Shino's quite glad he wears sunglasses now. You did some damn fine work here, kid, Anko says, coming over to give him a friendly punch on the shoulder. Now let's see if we can catch up to those hot-headed friends of yours. They'll need you if they're gonna get Sakura to your safe zone. Last one to them's a rotten egg. With that, she leaps into the trees, and Shino has no choice but to desperately try and keep up with her. Sakura has to give those genin from Rain some credit. The Sly Mind Effect Jutsu was perfect for pursuing enemies through the forest, especially when those enemies are extremely frazzled and don't have home field advantage. Kankuro and Temari have been jumping along the same circuitous path for almost 5 minutes now, Gaara draped over Temari's shoulder, not quite unconscious but definitely unresponsive. The siblings have already started sniping at each other, Kankuro grumbling about how the forest can't be this big and Temari snapping at him to stay on task. All Sakura needs is another minute. They'll definitely be irritable and tired enough for her to start picking them off. Temari stops on a sturdy branch. Kankuro, wait. Look, and she rests her hand on the trunk, right below 3 streaks of red. I marked this tree with some of Gaara's blood 2 minutes ago. We've passed it 3 times. Kankuro lets out a frustrated growl. This is why I fucking hate forests. I can't believe we got lost. Temari narrows her eyes and forms a one-handed seal. We didn't get lost. A certain pink nuisance who specializes in genjutsu made us lost. Sakura feels a wave of pressure from Temari as she releases the genjutsu and frowns, biting her lip. Right, she forgot Temari is clever. Alright, picking them off is going to have to start now. But she's only barely giving Temari any more than she's already earned. Sakura makes sure she's hidden behind a tree trunk in an invisible cloak jutsu as she calls out, you've found out that much. Do you think you can find me next? I can hide in the forest and run you ragged with genjutsu until you're too tired to hold on to Gaara anymore, or you can try and find me right now. Your call. Temari frowns, brows knitted in thought, before she gingerly passes Gaara off to Kankuro. Keep running. I'll handle her. You're seriously giving in. She's taunting you like a skookid, Temari, Kankuro exclaims, though he takes Gaara regardless. Temari just smirks, taking her fan off her back. If she thinks genjutsu's enough to beat me, she's in for a rude awakening. Realization flickers in Kankuro's eyes and he nods just once before leaping off with Gaara. Sakura has at best a half second to think that maybe she got overconfident before a gust of wind slices clean through the tree trunk right above her head. Sakura doesn't even care about the fact that running and leaping this fast is definitely going to distort the edges of her invisible cloak, and instead just dives off the branch as another gust of cutting wind comes right for her, catching a branch lower down and rolling behind another tree trunk. Sakura looks around the trunk and drops a petal illusion, fully visible to Temari. Sakura can also give Temari that she's quick on the trigger. She only has a window of 3 seconds to jump to another branch before another gust cuts that trunk to pieces. She leaps to another tree and then another, each one felled by Temari the second she catches sight of Sakura on it, and Sakura only barely gathers the presence of mind to have an exposed clone jump to another one while she stays cloaked and goes in a different direction so she can hunker down and catch her breath. It's difficult to do so when the simple force of Temari's fan pushes the air straight out of her lungs. The wind stops and she glances over her shoulder. Tamari is readying her fan for another barrage, eyes scanning the forest around her like a jeweler inspects a gem for flaws. Sakura frowns. Tamari's strategy is almost insultingly simple, but for someone from sand in terrain like this it makes perfect sense. If Sakura's going to keep hiding behind cover, then Tamari will get rid of all her cover. The second Sakura is forced into the open is the second Tamari closes the distance and the second she's lost. Or at least it is if Sakura keeps trying to go around and up. Sakura leaves a trail of petal illusions behind her as she starts leaping to lower and lower branches. She makes sure to jump up every now and again so her pattern isn't so obvious, but sometimes it's out of necessity because Sakura's getting to the level where Tamari is felling entire trees and they don't always fall in the direction she expects. When Sakura finally touches down on the forest floor, Tamari has created a clearing full of logs with a ring of dirt near the remaining tree's roots, her perch standing alone in the center. Sakura drops her invisible cloak and glares defiantly up at her opponent, who smirks at her in triumph. Nowhere left to hide, Tamari chuckles, readying her fan. Hope you've done your praying, kid, this is your last chance. The genjutsu is a simple one, and easily hidden behind the signs she needs for her ninjutsu. All it does is alter Tamari's perception ever so slightly, making her think that Sakura's standing just a little bit farther away than she actually is. Tamari leaps onto her fan and summons a gust of wind to send her flying down towards Sakura, surfing on the air with all the grace of a falcon and twice the speed. Sakura's window is rapidly closing as Tamari cuts through the air towards her and her hands race through the signs: ram, tiger, snake, dog, rat, ox, horse, rabbit, tiger, boar, snake. Tamari is 10 feet away as the crow flies and closing in fast. Sakura falls to one knee and slaps her hands flat on the ground earth style. Practice brick jutsu. The simple earthen wall shoots out of the ground at a diagonal and Tamari flies face first into the top. She's knocked out of the sky, her and her fan falling in an unconscious heap on the logs she's left in her wake. Sakura pauses, not to savor the victory but to simply catch her breath. She's at 35% chakra capacity now, give or take 5%. If she's fast and makes it count, she can take Gaara down and still have enough left over to make an escape, but everything has to go exactly right. Nothing ever goes exactly right. The voice doesn't speak but Sakura feels it, and she growls shut up as she leaps into the trees. Kankuro almost doesn't notice it when Gaara finally starts stirring again. His soft grunts of pain and discomfort are drowned out by the wind rushing in Kankuro's ears, so he feels Gaara come back to the world of the living when he starts squirming in his grasp. Yeah, welcome back you little goblin, Kankuro grumbles around his own panting. Tamari better get back here soon because despite being bigger than her he has much less patience for Gaara, and therefore much less patience with how heavy all his sand makes him. Gaara's first words to him are the ever so grateful, "Put me down, Kankuro." In order to make himself feel better about the ridiculous disaster their mission has become, Kankuro briefly entertains the thought of dropping Gaara right here and the little jerk plummeting to the ground like a stone. The tiny part of his mind that speaks in his half-remembered idea of his mother's voice will absolutely not let that happen, but it's a lovely thought. Not a chance, Kankuro growls back, "Your face is split wide open and there's a kunai sticking out of your arm. I'm getting you out of here and getting you medical attention before anything." Gaara's arm slams into Kankuro's stomach and he goes flying into the nearest tree trunk, gasping as the impact knocks the wind out of him. Gaara comes to a clumsy halt on a branch a couple yards ahead and Kankuro has to use chakra strings to catch and reel himself back up before hitting the forest floor. Gaara shouldn't hit this hard either. He'd been doing taijutsu training in secret or Tamari was wrong about the transformation failing completely. At this point Kankuro's not sure which one he wants to be true. And when he pulls himself back onto the branch, he realizes that's not even the worst case scenario, because Sakura Haruno managed to catch up with them and is standing on a branch 10 feet away. Oh fuck, Tamari, where? If this little pink nightmare killed his sister, Kankuro's not going to let Gaara have the chance, he'll murder her himself. "I am authorized to kill you, Gaara," Sakura declares, "if you surrender and let me take you back to the village to be detained and tried for your part in the invasion, I won't have to." Kankuro can't hold in a bewildered laugh. What the fuck is this girl? She talks like an academy student playing shinobi but was totally willing to kill Gaara before, and right after beating Tamari in record time she's hesitating? The pieces come together in a flash. She's clanless, completely ordinary, At 12 her chakra pool is gonna be worthless next to Gaara's, and she's been using a hell of a lot of chakra. Kankuro grins, 2 parts arrogant 1 part nervous. She's reaching her limit. This'll be over before you can say sand coffin. Instead of gagging her smart mouth with sand, Gaara lets out another pained groan and clutches at his right eye. With no provocation whatsoever, the sand armor on his left side starts to crack, spider webbing up and around the break in the armor where his giant gash has been left open to the world. Kankuro freezes, grin falling into pure terror. Mary was wrong, Gaara is still transforming. And if that glazed over look in his eyes is any indication, he's going to hurtle into that form with reckless abandon. Come on Gaara, keep it together. Remember the mission. Kankuro yells even though he knows it'll fall on deaf ears. Doesn't make sense, none of this makes any sense, Gaara rasps, scraping his nails against the sand armor. How did you make me bleed? You're a pitiful and soft little creature that's been coddled and smothered by love, and you wounded me. How? You have no purpose, your life has no value, it's nothing. I will not have my existence ended by nothing. I will not allow it. Kankuro just stares in mute horror as the sand from Gaara's gourd starts fusing into his sand armor, morphing, and changing into the dark-veined left arm, eye, and ear of Shukaku. It's of course just a second too late that Kankuro realizes exactly why Gaara's lost it. This is these exams and the Leaf Village's soft-hearted yet strong-armed genin chipping away at Gaara's fragile internal logic, the twisted framework he'd built up to try and understand the world, and Sakura making him bleed is just her taking that and breaking it over her knee. Suddenly he pities the little pink nightmare. Gaara leaps with a swiftness unfitting of how gargantuan and heavy the growth on the left side of his body is, lunging straight for Sakura. She's barely fast enough to jump above the impact, but the giant claw closes around the branch and snaps it like a twig, giving Sakura nowhere to land. She lets herself plummet towards the ground and grabs a branch as she falls, swinging from it to another tree as Gaara follows her and in an attempt to grab her leaves 5 gouges, a foot deep each, in the trunk. They're enough to fell the tree, which kicks up a giant cloud of dust as it hits the floor below. When the dust clears, Gaara is hanging from another tree by Shukaku's arm and Sakura has hidden herself from sight. Gaara is screaming now, saliva dripping from his misshapen mouth like a rabid dog. Go on, Sakura Haruno. Scurry and hide like the vermin you are. It makes no difference, I will tear down this whole forest to find you. There's nowhere in the world that's safe from me. Kankuro spots the hint of pink poking out behind a nearby tree trunk a fraction of a second before Gaara does. Gaara lets out a screech of found you, and Sakura sprints out from behind the tree, but Gaara pounces on her a second too late. She explodes in a puff of smoke the instant Gaara makes contact and comes running out onto the branch Gaara had leapt from, throwing a bevy of shuriken at his unarmored side. He pivots around and catches them with Shukaku's arm, letting them sink into the sand before it spits them back out at ludicrous speeds. They cut the branches they hit clean in half, and when they slam back into Sakura they knock her clean off the branch. Another puff of smoke, another clone. Gaara's laugh is a twisted parody of the sound. I thought you were going to kill me, Sakura Haruno. Was that all talk? Why do you keep running? Gaara falters and grips at his head yet again, letting out another pained screech, before he starts leaping around and indiscriminately tearing down trees, screaming for Sakura to come out. Kankuro wants to run, wants to flee as far as he can and leave Gaara behind forever, but can only sit there and stare in horror. It's been like that their whole lives and it's not about to change now. Kankuro except a long time ago he was going to be stuck with Gaara until he died. He just didn't think that it would be so soon. Something draws his eye, not a flash of pink, but a bright green glow that's nearly blinding. Sakura comes out onto a branch behind Gaara, 5 yards away, with chakra coating her forearms and writhing like flames. She's glaring at Gaara, teeth bared, slouched over like an animal. It echoes her burst of ferocity from the preliminaries, the part of her fight where she'd seemed like a completely different person. Where had this girl been hiding? Sakura leaps from the branch, sailing through the air straight towards Gaara's transformed arm, and Kankuro finds his voice a half-second too late. Watch out, Gaara. Gaara whirls around and brings his arm up to block, but that's the exact wrong move, because Sakura grabs one of the claws and her chakra surges through the sand, lighting up the black veins. She lets out a great roar of effort and yanks the claw with her as she flies past Gaara, tearing his arm clean down the middle up to his shoulder and pulling an agonized scream out of him. Kankuro shakes his head, mouth moving and voice coming out without his consent. No, 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 how the fuck did she wound him again? Sakura lets go of the claw and nearly misses her, landing on a nearby branch, while Gaara lands with a heavy thunk on a branch a yard or two down. There's a moment of deathly stillness as Sakura gulps in air and shakes all over, while Gaara lies unresponsive in a puddle of blood-stained sand. And just as Sakura turns to marvel at her handiwork, Gaara twitches and the sand starts to reform back into Shukaku's left side. Oh, you've got to be fucking kidding, Sakura breathes as Gaara pushes himself up onto his haunches. Something in Gaara's face twists, and when his voice comes out it's almost soft. I see now. I misjudged you, Sakura Harino. For a blessed second Kankuro dares to hope Gaara's come out the other side of this deep dark tunnel he's going through, but as Shukaku's tail starts to form from the gourd he knows he's wrong. You make sense now. Your eyes burn because you're trying to prove that your life is worth something, consequences be damned. You could care less about your village, your friends, even your family. My life is a trophy, your ultimate proof of the validity of your existence. You are like me, Sakura Harino. Now come at me with everything you have. Let's prove whose life is worth more. And Sakura is just staring at him, eyes very wide, skin very pale, lips very blue. She's nearly at full-on chakra exhaustion. That was all she had. Gaara wraps his tail and arm around the branch and pulls back until the sand is straining like a rubber band under the tension, then lets go. He launches himself straight up into Sakura, and in her state even she knows there's no dodging. She just brings her arms up and braces for an impact that sends her flying through 3 branches and slamming back first so hard into a tree's trunk that she burrows a foot deep into it. Gaara lands on a branch 2 yards away and taunts, "Where is your drive, Sakura Harino? We're just getting started, don't want to disappoint me, do you? Stand up and fight." Sakura spills out of the tree trunk, catching herself so she's on hands and knees on a branch, face obscured by her long bangs. For a moment, she just stays like that, breathing heavy, and then bright green chakra explodes up her left arm and her head whips around to face Gaara. Black markings in the shape of tiny flower petals cover the left side of her face and her eyes are wild as they zero in on Gaara. She shoves herself up so she's only barely standing, arms dragging on the bark near her feet, and shouts, "Fine. Let's fucking go." She and Gaara leap at each other at the exact same time, but Gaara swings at her with Shukaku's arm and Sakura has to awkwardly adjust her position in midair so it doesn't knock her out of the sky. Whatever big blow she was planning turns into her tapping Gaara's shoulder and all the chakra on her arm going out in a second. Gaara lands on his feet and Sakura lands in a heap, twitching as she lies helpless on the branch. There's a pregnant pause before Shukaku's arm dissolves at the shoulder and drops off of Gaara like a lizard shedding itself of its tail. Gaara screams, but it's not out of pain, it's a war cry. Sand creeps down his right arm instead to form another massive claw. Gaara pivots around and pounces towards Sakura. She doesn't move to dodge, doesn't even try. Either she's accepted death, or she's lost the strength necessary to avoid it. Kankuro closes his eyes and looks away with a wince he can't watch. Kankuro does not hear the sound of sand wrapping around Sakura and crushing her until she's just a rain of blood. He instead hears a hearty thwack. And Gaara yowling in pain, then the distinctive sound he's gotten quite familiar with of a body hitting a tree. Kankuro opens his eyes to see Naruto standing on a branch just in front of Sakura, teeth grinding as he glares at Gaara, while Sasuke and the Inuzuka's little dog crouch protectively over her. And all Kankuro can say is, "No fucking way." Chapter 10. Sasuke gingerly pushes back one of Sakura's bangs and swears through his teeth when he sees the petals blooming across her skin. He activates his Sharingan. He can't see her chakra pathways like a Byakugan would let him, but he doesn't need to. All the chakra in her body is pulsing out from the curse mark, the rest of her drained dry. She's in a bad way, Naruto, Sasuke calls, "We need to hurry." Naruto's not even listening, just staring at the hulking mass of sand and blood hunched over on the branch across from them. "Sasuke. Who the hell is this?" Sasuke glances to Akamaru, who's whining at such a high pitch he'd be inaudible if he tried to go higher. There's no one else it can be but Gaara. Gaara cocks his head slowly to the side, one blue eye squinting. "You two. You're the ones I didn't kill that day." Naruto sucks in a sharp breath and Sasuke bites down on his lower lip. The last thing he needs is to remember that day, how even while he was trapped they'd been at his mercy, and that wasn't even him at full power. Sasuke puts a pin in his fear. He'll come back to it. Right now he needs to focus, he needs to examine his enemy, he doesn't have time to be afraid. Despite the giant, bestial arm, Gaara's right side has gone through hell. Thanks to the cut across his face, blood is running down into his eye and he needs to blink rapidly to force it out. The handle of Sakura's kunai is still sticking out of his upper arm and his sand has warped around it, careful not to get any in the wound. If Sasuke had to guess, the sand armor ends right around where the cut on his face begins. They can use that. Naruto wheels around, grabs Sakura, we have to go now. The second Naruto takes his eyes off of him, Gaara dives off the branch, flying right at Sakura with his gigantic claws spread wide open and his teeth bared like he's going to tear Sakura's throat out with them. Sasuke's body is moving before he can tell it how, sliding in front of Sakura and stopping in a stance wide enough to cover her. Mind racing, Sharingan spinning, Sasuke has less than a minute to react. Which he realizes in a flash as he sees Gaara's exposed right flank is exactly how much time he needs. He sends chakra surging down his own right arm, as much as he can call up in less than a minute. It's more than he needs, as always, but this time he knows what to do with the excess. The lion's share turns into a coat of sparking lightning, and the fraction that remains glows a blue-green that's nearly overpowered by the Chidori. The second Gaara's in striking range, Sasuke pushes off with both legs and buries his hand into Gaara's side. The Chidori slices through the sand armor like butter and the impact pulls an animalistic shriek from Gaara's throat as he convulses from the small-scale electrocution and his pulse skyrocketing. He plummets abruptly downward like a stone, smashing clean through several branches before his tail wraps around a tree trunk and stops his descent. Gaara just hangs there twitching, mouth wide open, blue eye rolled so far back it's nearly all white. Sasuke overshot his own jump and just barely catches himself with his bad arm on a nearby branch, biting down on his tongue to keep from swearing out loud at the pain in his shoulder, before pulling himself up and jumping back to Sakura's side. His knee protests at the hard landing and Sasuke has to stifle another swear. "What did you do?" Kankuro shouts from where he's been cowering this whole time. "He'll be fine," Sasuke snaps, throwing Sakura over one shoulder and turning to Naruto. "He'll probably only be out for 30 seconds, and that's if we're lucky. Let's get a move on." Shikaku's arm shoots out and slams through where the branch connects to the trunk. As Sasuke's feet fall out from under him, he has a second to think. He really should know better about tempting fate by now. Then he's falling, so fast and so hard he doesn't have time to do anything but pull Sakura off his shoulder, so he's shielding her with his body. Sasuke feels the branches snap against his back before he hears them until he slams into a branch so sturdy he gives when it won't, letting out all the air in his lungs in a loud gasp as he goes bouncing off in another direction. He keeps his arms locked tight around Sakura. If she's hurt, he's failed his mission, and he will not fail again. Sasuke lands awkwardly on his side, bouncing once and nearly letting Sakura go, but just barely managing to keep a grip on her as he rolls to a stop. Down on the forest floor, it's eerie how quiet it is, and even though he knows he probably doesn't have a moment, Sasuke takes one to learn how to breathe again. It's as he's getting his breath back that he feels Sakura weakly squirm against his grip and loosens it just enough that she pushes back and he can see her face. Her petal-covered cheeks are streaked with tears and the look in her eyes is both unreadable and far too familiar. She tries to push against him before seizing up, rasping through clenched teeth. "Why? I'm supposed to be stronger now, I'm supposed to be protecting you, why are you still coming to my rescue?" Sasuke knows that feeling. That completely helpless, worthless feeling, of thinking you were good enough and being proven wrong. Of your pride being taken and torn to pieces, burned, and spit upon to put out the flames. What would he have wanted to hear? What does Sakura need to hear? What would Kakashi say? The words come in a halting, stilted cadence as he thinks over each one. Sometimes we're not as strong as we think we are. And we might be wrong about what it is to be strong. It's okay. We're still genin. This is how we learn. Sakura does not start feeling better. Instead, her eyes well up with tears again and she lets her head drop onto his shoulder as her body shakes with tiny sobs. Wrong choice of words. Sasuke bites his lip to keep from scowling too hard. He should have just said something ridiculous and saccharine like Naruto would have, Something about how he rescued her because teammates help each other and turning your back on your friends makes you worse than trash and... Sasuke tenses when he realizes Gaara isn't crashing through the trees to land on top of them and kill them. He lets Sakura go and sits up, just in time to see Akamaru jump down several branches to land beside them, tail wagging as he sniffs intently at Sakura. Sasuke spares the dog a smile before turning his attention back up to the branches above. He can't see through the leaves, but he can still hear Naruto and Gaara clear enough to know what they're saying. Gaara's back in full force, growling, "Who are these two to you? Why risk your life against me to protect them?" There's a pause before Naruto shoots back with quite enough rage but not enough drive. "What kind of question is that? They're my friends. If you try to lay another grain of sand on them I'll pulverize you, believe it. Come on and try it then." Gaara's screaming challenge is answered by a war cry from Naruto and a whack, too thick to be one of Naruto's blows. He hears Naruto swear under his heavy, labored breath, then mutter, "Got no choice. Gotta protect them." Gaara's laugh is dark and warped, "And that's exactly why you're going to die. As long as you fight for the sake of others you'll stay stuck where you are, down in the muck. There can be only one winner, only one existence proven. Forget your friends and fight for yourself." Sasuke can picture Naruto grinding his teeth. "You're talking pretty big, but don't forget who wounded you. Who landed that first hit on you in years? Sasuke, Sakura, Lee, they all fight for the village and for each other. You sure as hell weren't stronger than them." Gaara's laugh this time is raspier, less assured. "You think you know them so well. There's no way to ever truly know someone else's heart. There's no point in even trying. Let trivial feelings like friendship and loyalty cloud your focus and you'll die. Yeah, keep yapping while you still have a mouth to yap with. I'm about to shut you up once and for all." All Sasuke has are the sounds of battle, but they don't sound very promising. He frowns hard, clenching his hands into white-knuckled fists. What is Naruto doing up there? He has half a mind to go up there himself and take over this battle, but stabs of pain from his shoulder and knee set him straight before he can. He shakes his head, time to think like a shinobi. He turns to Akamaru and whispers, "Can you get up there and see what's going on? When you come back just tell me if Naruto's winning." The little dog nods and hops back up the branches without hesitation. He's gone for maybe 20 seconds before he comes back down and vigorously shakes his head. Sasuke swears under his breath. "Fuck thinking like a shinobi, time to rush in there like an idiot." "Keep Sakura safe," Sasuke growls, shoving so much chakra into his feet they start glowing. "I'm going in. I'll be back soon, I promise." He leaps up into the trees with so much force he craters the ground behind him. Sasuke flies like a rocket back up into the canopy just in time to hear the boom and see the telltale dark gray smoke of a paper bomb. Naruto comes tumbling end over end out of the smoke and Sasuke kicks off a tree with his bad leg to change his trajectory. He tackles Naruto in midair and soars until his feet hit a branch and he forces out enough chakra to stick their whole bodies to it. Naruto drops to the bark with a yelp and Sasuke falls to one knee with a hiss. He's pushed it too far. His knee is nearly numb from the pain and his shoulder might have been dislocated again from when he slammed into Naruto. He whips around to see his teammates' handiwork. If he didn't take Gaara down with whatever the hell that maneuver was, Sasuke is going to scream. When the smoke clears, the guise of Shukaku is melting back into normal sand on its left side and Gaara is struggling to stay upright, warbling to himself. He attacked the base of the tail where the defense is weakest. He didn't wound me, but the sand couldn't absorb the impact. Despite that, the sand is already starting to reconstitute itself, and when Sasuke looks to Naruto he sees that same cocktail of fear, disgust, and sympathy from their meeting at the hospital. But now there's something else, something that overpowers all the other feelings. Doubt. And something in Sasuke absolutely hates seeing it in Naruto's eyes. So Sasuke grabs Naruto by the collar and screams in his face, "Get your shit together, Uzumaki. Sakura needs to get the hell out of here before she gets any worse, so either you let me buy you time to get her back to Shikamaru and Hinata or you get your head out of your ass and fight. I had to sit by and watch as I lost everything once, and I swear to God if you make me do that again I will follow you to hell, drag you back, and kill you again." Sasuke drops Naruto's collar and catches his breath, leaning on his good leg. Naruto just stares at him for what feels like an eternity. His blue eyes spark to life. "I get it now. Sasuke furrows his eyebrows. You get what? Naruto pushes himself to his feet. Gaara's no different than I am, with the exact same sadness and loneliness. He didn't fight for anyone, while I was up here worrying about protecting you and Sakura and for a second there I thought maybe he was strong, stronger than you or me or anyone else, because he didn't care about anyone. I let him get under my skin. I already knew better. That's not what real strength is. If you just fight for yourself you'll never be strong, not ever. Naruto presses his hands into a seal and lets out another war cry as chakra rushes up around him like a burning wildfire, so strong and so bright Sasuke has to shield his eyes. There's a burst of white smoke, and suddenly the forest has become an orange grove as clones of Naruto appear on every surface they can cover. Sasuke can't help a twinge of disbelief and something much uglier as he looks around at the sheer volume of clones. Intellectually he knew Naruto was strong, that the chakra of a tailed beast would make him even stronger, but this was further than he'd ever thought Naruto could reach. But he doesn't have time to be jealous. There's a mission to complete. Sorry, didn't mean to keep you waiting, Naruto crows as he points at Gaara. Get ready for an original jutsu straight from my ninja handbook. Sasuke snorts, so I can assume you've got this. Naruto grins over his shoulder, you know it. You and Sakura get going, I'll catch up in no time. Believe it. Sasuke just smirks. At this point how can I not? He drops back down to the forest floor and scoops up Sakura, breaking out into as full a sprint he can manage on one good leg. He feels an impact hard enough to shake the ground and nearly stumbles but catches himself. He has to keep running, has to get Sakura to safety, has to complete his mission because he is not a failure. That single-minded drive keeps Sasuke from noticing the pain in his leg, but it also leads to him nearly cutting Shino's throat open with a hastily palmed kunai as he runs straight into him. Shino grabs his arm with a swarm of bugs. Calm down, it's just me. And I'm not alone. Howdy kids, the jolly voice of the second exam proctor chirps as she lands beside Shino, you playing nice. Sasuke can only blink, why are you here? Anko just pulls the collar of her long coat back to show a small black spot that Sasuke almost mistakes for a bruise before he sees the shape is far too similar to 3 Tomo, because I've got a vested interest in keeping your girl out of Orochimaru's hands. Speaking of, I see she didn't take our warnings seriously. Sakura fidgets in Sasuke's grasp, I didn't have a choice, Gaara would've. Calm down, honey, I'm just foolin'. Anko sighs as she plucks Sakura out of Sasuke's grip to carry her bridal style. Come on, let's find your friends. And don't get any ideas about breaking off to join Naruto and playing hero, trust me I will know about them. The slight edge to her grin tells Sasuke there's really not much room for him to argue. When they reach the deep forest clearing, Hinata and Shikamaru set up and Sasuke throws dignity and his image to the wind to collapse face first into the dirt. Shino settles down next to him cross-legged and Shikamaru comes over to nudge him with his shoe. Shikamaru clicks his tongue, geez, chasing Sakura must have really taken it out of you. Sasuke rolls so he's on his side, catching a glimpse of Anko as she gently sets Sakura down, and asks, is she going to be alright? Anko just smiles, she's gonna be just fine, Romeo. You can relax. Sasuke immediately pushes himself up, trying to get to his feet despite the fact that one leg keeps giving out. Can't, have to go back, Naruto's. Another earth-shaking impact, one that knocks Shikamaru and Hinata both onto their butts. A shadow passes over the clearing and Sasuke finds himself scooching back with his fellow genin to get a good view of what's blocking out the sun past the trees. It's a frog. A gigantic frog. A gigantic bright orange frog with a pipe in its mouth and a scar across its eye facing down a gigantic tanuki made of sand. On second thought, maybe Naruto would be fine without Sasuke's help. Still, he can't help but breathe. How in the world how did Naruto learn how to do that? Shikamaru and Hinata turn to him with wide eyes. Naruto did that. Hinata turns back towards the fight, beaming from ear to ear, wide eyes positively sparkling. Amazing, he's gotten so strong. I didn't. I had no idea you could summon creatures that big. Shikamaru's smirking now, leaning forward on his knees to watch the show. Who knew he had it in him? Sasuke can only shrug one shoulder. Whoever trained him, I guess. A fight of this scale rocks the ground with every blow and threatens to fell the whole forest, but the genin can't look away from the sheer spectacle of it all. For a long moment Sasuke is caught between feeling deeply inadequate and just screaming his lungs out cheering for Naruto, and the latter wins the day. The second Shikamaru and Hinata decide to start loudly, or in Hinata's case loudly, rooting for his teammate. Despite the battle of titans above, Sasuke's eyes keep flickering to Sakura, who almost looks asleep except for how her eyes twitch in time with the back and forth rhythm of the duel. The battle ends in the grandest way possible, with Naruto transforming the toad into the nine-tailed fox. It's enough to even make Anko swear out loud as she gapes at the battle above. No power in the world could have kept Sasuke from running to Naruto. The second Shukaku dissolves and the great toad disappears. When Sasuke finds them, Naruto and Gaara are lying on the ground, so spent all Naruto can move is his head as he turns to look at him. Despite that, there's a long, scuffed trail behind him. The pieces aren't hard to put together. He crawled towards Gaara with his chin. His headband is gone and blood is flowing from a cut on his forehead. There's an identical one on Gaara. And Gaara, he's just staring up at the pieces of blue sky peeking out through green leaves. It doesn't take him long to find Naruto's headband in the bushes, and when he limps over to Naruto again, he kneels at his side and holds it out for him to see. You should keep better track of this. Naruto looks up to him, blue eyes wide and brimming with tears. Sakura, is she? She's going to be fine, Sasuke replies. It's all over. Now stop squirming so I can heal you. Naruto slowly looks between Sasuke and Gaara before he turns his gaze up to Sasuke. Can you heal him first? Sasuke almost asks why. But then he remembers how Naruto had cried, had mourned Haku and Zabuza despite everything, and he doesn't need to. He doesn't even get an inch away from Naruto before Gaara's siblings touch down in front of him. Despite how Temari is exhausted and sporting a broken nose and Kankuro had never seemed like he cared that much about his brother, they both crouch protectively in front of him. Gaara's voice is so soft it's almost inaudible. That's enough. It's over. Kankuro opens his mouth to protest, but the sight of Gaara's face more relaxed than it's likely ever been makes him stop. And he murmurs instead, all right then. There's a long moment where Gaara just stares at the two boys from the Leaf Village. Naruto Uzumaki and Sasuke Uchiha. Naruto finally lost consciousness, but Sasuke is gazing back, eyes focused on him and Kankuro as Gaara leans heavy on his brother's shoulder. Gaara remembers when he first saw Sasuke's eyes. They were akin to two pits, so deep they were bottomless, two inescapable black holes that consumed anything that got too close. There was hatred in them, rage, and a loneliness few people could survive. But now those eyes are looking at three enemy ninja, and they aren't seeing enemies anymore. They're seeing a family, one that had been on the brink of shattering, but had a chance to pull itself together again. And those eyes are so full of longing it's painful to look at. They disappear into the trees. Gaara starts to understand as he slowly, carefully turns everything over in his mind. Naruto had to build his family from the ground up. Sasuke had his taken and ached every day it wasn't there. Gaara has a chance. It's more than they ever had. So he whispers, Temari. Kankuro. I'm sorry. Kabuto presses down hard on Orochimaru's wrist. Do you feel that? Orochimaru hisses through gritted teeth, for the last damn time, Kabuto, no. Then I'm afraid the situation is about as dire as it looks. Kabuto sighs, it's beyond my skill level. You're going to need another body a lot sooner than we thought. Orochimaru clicks his tongue, it might go deeper than that. Sarutobi used the Reaper Death Seal, who knows if switching bodies would ever be enough. Kabuto is quiet for a moment before he looks Orochimaru in the eye. We need a second opinion. You know who from? Orochimaru's face is unreadable. I do. And in the meantime, just in case, we need to speed things up with Sakura. Kabuto nods, as you wish. Check the description for the links to the author.